Why do you always eat alone? Grant Holloway's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. For 3 years, not a single person had dared approach his table. Not the waiters who knew his order by heart. Not the business partners who needed his money. Not even the women who wanted his last name. But this 8-year-old black girl with beads in her braids and a yellow dress 2 sizes too big? She walked right up to the richest, loneliest man in Seattle and signed a question that shattered everything. "Excuse me?" Grant signed back, his hands trembling. This couldn't be real. Children didn't know sign language. Children didn't see invisible people. "I said," Sky repeated, her small hands moving faster, bolder, "why do you always eat alone?" The entire restaurant gasped. Silverware clattered against plates. Conversations died mid-sentence. Because nobody, and I mean nobody, talked to Grant Holloway anymore. Not since the accident that crushed his throat and stole his voice. Not since he became the mute billionaire the tabloids loved to mock. Not since his fiancée left him for a man who could actually speak. Sky. A woman's voice cracked through the silence like a whip. "Get away from him right now." Riley Monroe appeared out of nowhere, her black waitress uniform wrinkled from a double shift, her eyes wide with the kind of terror that comes from knowing you can't afford to lose this job. "Sir, I am so sorry," she stammered, reaching for her daughter. "Sky, apologize and let's go." But Sky didn't move. She stood there, hands on her hips, staring at the billionaire like he was just another lonely person who needed a friend. Grant's hands shook as he pulled out his notepad. 3 years of silence. 3 years of eating alone. 3 years of being invisible in a room full of people. He wrote 5 words that would change 3 lives forever. "Nobody's ever asked me that." Sky read it, and her face broke into the brightest smile Grant had seen in years. "Well, mister," she said, her hands dancing through sign language like she was born speaking it, "maybe somebody should have." And just like that, the mute billionaire who owned half of Seattle, who could buy anything except happiness, who had millions of dollars but 0 reasons to smile, started crying. Right there. In the middle of the fanciest restaurant in the city. Because an 8-year-old girl had just asked him the one question everyone else was too afraid to ask. "Don't you want to be happy?" Yo. Welcome to Top Story, family. Listen, if you're new here, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. And if you've been here before, you already know we don't do boring stories. We do real stories. Stories that hit different. Stories that make you feel something. Before we get into this, let me pray over you real quick. God, I ask that you break every chain holding your people back today. I pray for financial breakthroughs, healing in broken relationships, and peace that makes no sense in the middle of chaos. Cover everyone watching this with favor they didn't earn and blessings they didn't expect. In Jesus' name, amen. Now listen closely. What you just witnessed was the beginning of the most beautiful transformation I've ever told. A mute billionaire. A struggling single mother. And a little girl who refused to let either of them stay broken. This story has everything: betrayal, kidnapping attempts, courtroom battles, and a love so powerful it literally gave a man back his voice. So buckle up, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and let's start. Because what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Grant Holloway was a ghost in an expensive suit. Every Thursday at 7:30 p.m., he walked through the doors of North and Pine Restaurant. Past the fancy tables. Past the rich people talking business. Past everyone who wanted to get close to his money. But Grant wasn't there for them. He was there for booth 7. The corner table where he could disappear. "Good evening, Mr. Holloway," the waiter whispered. Grant nodded. Never smiled. Never spoke. Because Grant Holloway couldn't speak. 3 years ago, a truck smashed into his car. The crash broke more than bones, it crushed his throat, stole his voice, trapped him in silence. Doctors tried everything. Surgery after surgery. Nothing worked. "I'm sorry, Mr. Holloway," the doctor had said. "You'll never speak again." That was the day the billionaire who built his empire on powerful speeches became a stranger to his own voice. Tonight felt the same as always. He sat alone, checking his phone. His company managed billions. His signature could change everything. But sitting there, he felt like the poorest man alive. He tried dating after the accident. Women who pitied him or just wanted his money. The last one, Lydia, lasted 8 months until he caught her cheating. "You can't expect me to live like this forever, Grant," she'd said. "I need someone who can actually talk." So now he sat alone. Every Thursday. Same booth. Same crushing loneliness. But tonight was different. As Grant lifted his fork, a small voice shattered his world. "Excuse me, mister." Grant looked up, shocked. A little black girl stood next to his table. Maybe 8 years old. Braids with colorful beads. Yellow dress. Dark eyes full of confidence. But what stopped his heart were her hands. Moving through the air in perfect sign language. "Why do you always eat alone?" she signed clearly. Grant's mouth dropped open. Nobody had ever approached his table. Nobody had ever tried to talk to him in his language. "Sky." A woman's voice cracked across the restaurant. "Get back here." A young black woman rushed over. Restaurant uniform. Embarrassed face. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Holloway," she said breathlessly. "Sky, leave him alone." But Sky didn't move. She kept staring at Grant, waiting. Grant pulled out his notepad with shaking hands. "Nobody's ever asked me that before." Sky read it and smiled. "Well, maybe someone should." Grant Holloway, worth billions, who owned half of Seattle, smiled back. Really smiled. For the first time in 3 years. But you won't believe what happened when Sky came back the next week. The following Thursday, Grant arrived 15 minutes early. He told himself it was routine. Same booth. Same time. But deep down, he was waiting for her. At 7:45 p.m., the doors opened. Grant's heart jumped as Sky bounced inside, braids dancing. Riley followed, looking tired. "Mama, there's my friend," Sky said, tugging Riley's uniform. Riley's eyes met Grant's across the restaurant. She looked nervous, like she wanted to keep walking. But Sky was already heading toward booth 7. "Hi, Mr. Grant." Sky approached with confidence, clutching something small. Grant smiled, the second time in a week. He wrote, "Hello, Sky. What do you have?" Sky opened her hands. Another paper crane, bright yellow this time. "I made you a new one," she signed excitedly. "Sunshine yellow because you smiled last week. Happy colors for happy people." Grant's chest tightened. When was the last time someone called him happy? Sky placed the crane next to his water glass, gentle as handling treasure. "Sky, let the man eat," Riley said, reaching their table. She looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Holloway. She's talked about you all week." Grant looked at Riley, really looked. The exhaustion in her eyes. The weight on her shoulders. The tremor in her hands from double shifts. She was beautiful, but tired beautiful. Fighting battles every day beautiful. Grant wrote, "She's not bothering me. I've been thinking about you both too." Riley blinked in surprise. "Really?" Grant picked up the yellow crane carefully. Then he put it in his jacket pocket, right next to the white one from last week. "You kept it?" Sky's eyes went wide. Grant touched his pocket and nodded. "Both of them." They're special. Mama, look. He kept my cranes. For the first time, Riley's hard expression cracked. A tiny smile appeared. That's very kind, she said quietly. Grant wrote, call me Grant. Would you like to sit? Just for a minute. Riley looked around the fancy restaurant. Rich people, crystal glasses, silver forks. This wasn't her world. We couldn't. We don't belong. Grant held up his hand gently. Everyone belongs somewhere. Tonight, you belong here. Sky was already climbing in. Come on, Mama. Riley hesitated, then slowly sat down. She looked ready to run. Are you hungry? Grant wrote. We ate at home, Riley said quickly. But Grant noticed Sky staring at the breadstick basket. The restaurant's famous $12 garlic breadsticks. Grant pushed the basket toward them. Please. I can't eat all these. Mama, can we? Sky asked hopefully. Riley looked torn. Pride fighting with her daughter's happiness. Finally, she nodded. Just one, baby. Grant flagged down Marcus, the waiter, writing on a napkin, could you bring another basket? Marcus looked surprised. Of course, Mr. Holloway. As they waited, magic happened. Sky started telling Grant about her week, all in sign language. School, friends, the crane contest she'd won in art class. You understand everything she says, Riley said, amazed. Grant wrote, I learned after my accident. It became my voice. Riley's expression softened. The accident, was it bad? Grant paused, then wrote, 3 years ago. Truck hit my car. Lost my voice, gained silence. I'm sorry, Riley whispered. Grant shook his head, don't be. Sometimes losing something helps you find something better. He looked at Sky, now folding another crane. Like what? Riley asked. Grant smiled, like new friends. Fresh breadsticks arrived. Sky's eyes went wide biting the warm, garlicky bread. This is the best thing ever, she said, then signed it for Grant. Grant laughed, actually laughed. The sound was rusty, barely there, but real. Riley stared. You can make sound. Grant touched his throat, sometimes. When I'm really happy. Sitting there, watching Sky enjoy breadsticks while Riley finally relaxed, Grant realized something incredible. For the first time in 3 years, he was really happy. But their perfect moment was about to be tested by someone from Riley's past who would change everything. The third Thursday brought something unexpected. Grant was waiting in booth 7 when Sky burst through the doors like a tiny hurricane. But this time, she carried more than just a crane. She had a small plastic metronome. Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant, she called, running toward his table with the device clutched tight. Riley hurried behind her, shaking her head with a tired smile. I told her to leave that at home, but I wanted to show you. Sky said, sliding into the booth. Her eyes sparkled as she placed the metronome on the table. Grant stared at the scratched white device. Clearly old, probably from school. One corner held together with tape. He wrote, what is it? It's a metronome. Sky signed enthusiastically. From band class. It makes beats for music. Want to hear? Before Grant could respond, Sky clicked the switch. Tick 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 tick. The steady rhythm filled the space between them. Simple. Hypnotic. Grant's eyes closed automatically. For 3 years, his world had been silent meetings, quiet dinners, endless loneliness. No rhythm. No beat. Just empty space where sound used to live. But this was different. The metronome wasn't trying to replace his lost voice. It was creating something new. A heartbeat for their friendship. Do you like it? Sky asked, watching his face carefully. Grant opened his eyes and nodded. More than liked it. The steady tick-tick-tick made him feel alive. Sky uses it for piano practice, Riley said, settling beside her daughter. She looked more comfortable tonight. You play piano? Grant wrote. A little, Sky signed modestly. Mama saves money for lessons. I practice on the old piano at church. Grant's chest tightened. A little girl making music on borrowed time, with a taped-together metronome and church piano practice. But her joy was bigger than any concert hall. Can you show me? He wrote. Sky's face lit up. She positioned her small hands on the table like it was a keyboard. Following the metronome's beat, she began playing an invisible song. Her fingers danced across imaginary keys with surprising skill. Grant watched, mesmerized. Even without sound, he could feel the music in her movements. The passion. The pure love of creating something beautiful. She's got natural talent, Riley said quietly, pride and sadness mixing. The music teacher says she could be really good with proper training, but she didn't finish. She didn't need to. Grant understood. Proper training cost money they didn't have. When Sky finished, she looked at Grant hopefully. Did you like my song? Grant's throat made that rusty sound, his almost laugh. It was beautiful. What was it called? I made it up. Sky said proudly. I call it, The Lonely Man's Song, because it's sad but hopeful at the same time. Grant's hand froze. Sad but hopeful. That's exactly how he felt sitting here. Play it again, he wrote. Sky grinned and repeated her performance. This time, Grant closed his eyes and let the metronome wash over him. In his mind, he could almost hear the melody Sky was creating. Beautiful. Heartbreaking. Full of dreams too big for an 8-year-old to carry alone. When she finished, Grant did something that shocked the entire restaurant. He started clapping. The sound echoed through the fancy dining room. Other customers turned to stare. The billionaire who never made noise was applauding a little girl's invisible piano concert. Grant didn't care. Let them stare. Sky deserved applause. Thank you, she signed, cheeks glowing with happiness. Riley wiped her eyes quickly, but Grant caught the tears. Good tears. Proud tears. She's incredible, he wrote to Riley. She is, Riley whispered. She's everything good in my world. Grant looked at them, Riley's protective love, Sky's innocent talent, and felt something crack open inside his chest. For 3 years, he'd thought his accident stole everything important. But maybe it had just made room for something better. Maybe it had prepared him for this moment. This table. These two people who saw past his silence to something worth knowing. The metronome kept ticking. Tick 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 tick. Like a heart. Like hope. Like the sound of loneliness finally ending. But what Grant didn't know was that someone had been watching them through the restaurant window. Someone who'd been looking for Riley Monroe for 3 long years. Someone who was about to destroy their perfect Thursday night ritual. That night, Riley couldn't sleep. She stood at her tiny apartment window, watching Seattle's city lights blur through raindrops. Sky was asleep in their shared bed, clutching the new crane she'd made for Grant. But all Riley could think about was the way Grant had looked at them tonight. Like they mattered. Like they belonged in his world. And that terrified her. Don't be stupid, Riley, she whispered to herself. Rich men always want something. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. Derek Lowe had been charming too. Smooth talker with expensive clothes and bigger promises. He'd swept 19-year-old Riley off her feet when she was working at a diner. You're special, baby, he used to say. I'm gonna take care of you and our little girl forever. Forever lasted exactly 2 years. Riley touched the scar on her wrist, hidden under her work uniform, but always there. The reminder of the night Derek showed his true colors. "You think you can leave me?" he'd screamed, grabbing her arm until it snapped. "You think you can take my daughter and just disappear?" But Sky wasn't really his daughter. Not in any way that mattered. Derek had vanished when Riley got pregnant. Came back when Sky turned 5, claiming daddy rights he'd never earned. The custody battle nearly broke Riley financially and emotionally. "He's dangerous," her lawyer had warned. "Men like him don't give up. They see children as possessions." Riley had won custody, but barely. And only because Derek got arrested for fraud before the final hearing. Now he was out of prison. Somewhere. Waiting. And here she was, letting her guard down because a billionaire smiled at her daughter. "Mama?" Sky's sleepy voice broke through Riley's dark thoughts. "What is it, baby?" Riley quickly wiped her tears and went to the bed. "Why are you crying?" Sky signed, even half asleep. Riley sat on the mattress edge. "Just thinking, sweetheart. About Mr. Grant?" Riley's heart clenched. "Why would you think that?" "Because you smile different now. Like when you used to sing to me when I was little. Before life got so hard. Before survival became more important than singing." "Mr. Grant makes you happy," Sky continued. "That's good, right?" Riley looked at her daughter's innocent face. When had Sky become so wise? "It's complicated, baby." "Why?" How could she explain? That rich men were dangerous. That caring about someone meant they could hurt you. That every man who'd promised to stay had left. Because. Riley struggled with the words. Because people like us don't get fairy tales. Sky frowned. "What do you mean?" "Mr. Grant lives in a different world, Sky. Big house, fancy cars, important friends. We're just the help." "But he likes our cranes," Sky protested. "He keeps them in his pocket. Right over his heart." Riley's throat tightened. She'd noticed that too. "And he laughed at my music," Sky continued. "Real laughing, Mama. Like he forgot how to be sad." "I know, baby, but—" "And his eyes get soft when he looks at you." Riley's breath caught. "Sky. Like the pictures of Daddy. Before he got mean." Riley's blood went cold. She'd never told Sky about Derek's violence. Never explained why they moved 3 times in 2 years, always looking over their shoulders. But children see everything. "Mr. Grant isn't mean, Mama," Sky said firmly. "He's just lonely. Like we used to be." Used to be. Riley realized Sky was right. For the first time in years, Thursday nights didn't feel empty. They had somewhere to go. Someone who waited for them. Someone who saw Sky's light and didn't try to dim it. But that made it more dangerous, not less. "Promise me something," Riley said, taking Sky's small hands. "What?" "If anything happens, if anyone tries to take you away from me, you run to Mr. Grant." "Okay." Sky's eyes went wide. Why would someone try to take me? Riley's heart hammered. She was scaring her daughter. But fear had kept them safe for 3 years. "Just promise me, baby." "I promise," Sky whispered. "But Mama? Nothing bad is gonna happen. Mr. Grant won't let it." Riley wanted to believe that. Wanted to trust in something bigger than her own fear. But as she tucked Sky back under their thin blanket, one thought echoed in her mind. The last time she'd trusted a man with their safety, she'd ended up with a broken wrist and a daughter who'd learned to sign because her father disappeared. Grant Holloway might be different. But different didn't always mean safe. And Riley had learned the hard way that when you have everything to lose, hope was the most dangerous emotion of all. Outside their window, the city lights kept twinkling. Beautiful and distant. Just like the life Riley was afraid to believe they deserved. But what Riley didn't know was that in a penthouse 3 miles away, Grant Holloway was making a decision that would put her worst fears to the test. Grant arrived at North and Pine 30 minutes early. He told himself he was just getting work done before dinner. But the truth sat heavy in his chest, he was waiting for them. He'd been thinking about Riley all week. The way she'd smiled when Sky played her invisible piano. The careful way she watched him, like she was waiting for him to disappoint her. Someone had hurt her. Badly. Grant recognized the signs because he'd felt them too. The way she held herself ready to run. The protective wall around her heart that only cracked open for Sky. But tonight, something was different in Grant's chest. A warmth he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. He sat in booth 7, not reading emails or checking stock prices. Just waiting. His jacket was folded neatly beside him, the 2 paper cranes safe in the inside pocket. At 7:35, the restaurant doors opened. Grant's heart jumped as Sky bounced inside, her school backpack sliding off one shoulder. She wore a bright red dress today, and her smile could have powered the whole building. Behind her, Riley walked more slowly. She looked tired, like always. But when her eyes found Grant's across the restaurant, something soft flickered in her expression. Recognition. Maybe even relief. "Mr. Grant." Sky called out, heading for his table. But Grant was watching Riley. The way her shoulders relaxed when she saw him. The tiny smile that touched her lips before she could stop it. She'd been thinking about him too. "You're early tonight," Riley said as they reached booth 7. Grant pulled out his notepad. "I wanted to make sure I got our table." "Our table." The words made Riley's cheeks flush. "Can I sit with you?" Sky asked, already climbing into the booth. Grant nodded and wrote, "This is your spot now." As Sky settled in, she pulled something from her backpack. Not just one crane this time, 3 of them. Red, blue, and white. "I made extras," she signed proudly. "One for each week we've been friends." Grant's throat tightened. 3 weeks. Had it really changed his entire world in just 3 weeks? He picked up each crane carefully, examining the perfect folds. Then he did what Sky expected, slipped all 3 into his jacket pocket. "How many do you have now?" Riley asked, sliding in next to her daughter. Grant touched his pocket and wrote, 5. "I keep them all." "Why?" Riley's voice was quiet, curious. Grant looked at her, really looked. At the way she leaned slightly toward him now instead of away. At the genuine interest in her dark eyes. "Because they remind me I'm not invisible," he wrote. Riley's breath caught. "Is that how you felt? Invisible?" Grant nodded. "For 3 years. Until Sky asked me why I eat alone. And now?" Riley asked softly. Grant's pen hovered over the paper. How could he explain? That Thursday nights had become the brightest part of his week. That he'd started coming early just to watch for them through the window. "Now I feel seen," he wrote. Sky beamed and reached across the table to pat his hand. "That's because we're friends, Mr. Grant. Friends see each other." Grant smiled, his real smile, the one that only appeared around them. But as he looked at Riley, he saw something else in her eyes. Fear, mixed with the warmth. She was falling for him. And it scared her. Grant understood that fear. After his accident, after Lydia's betrayal, he'd built walls too. But somehow, a fearless 8-year-old with paper cranes had knocked them all down. "Are you hungry?" Grant wrote. "Always," Sky said with a grin. But Riley shook her head. "We can't keep letting you buy us dinner." "Why not?" Grant wrote. "Because." Riley struggled. "Because I can't pay you back." Grant's heart broke a little. She thought this was about money. About owing him something. Friends don't keep score, he wrote. But Riley gestured around the fancy restaurant. And you're what? Grant wrote, his pen pressing harder. Riley looked down. Nobody important. Grant's chair scraped as he leaned forward. He wrote in bold letters, "You are the most important people in my world." Riley's eyes went wide. Skye gasped. Really? Skye asked. Grant nodded firmly. Then he wrote, "I was dying before I met you. Dying of loneliness. You saved my life." Riley's eyes filled with tears. "Grant. Let me buy you dinner. Let me be your friend. Please." Riley looked at her daughter, who was watching with hopeful eyes. Then back at Grant, this man who'd somehow seen through their worn clothes and tired smiles to the people underneath. "Okay," she whispered. "But only because Skye likes the breadsticks." Grant's laugh, that rusty, beautiful sound, filled the space between them. For the next hour, they talked and laughed and shared stories. It felt like family. But as the evening wound down, Grant noticed Riley checking her phone nervously. "Everything okay?" he wrote. "Just checking the time," she said quickly. Too quickly. Grant's business instincts kicked in. Something was wrong. "Riley, are you in some kind of trouble?" he wrote quietly. Riley's face went pale. She glanced at Skye, who was folding another crane. "No," she said. But her voice shook. Grant leaned closer and wrote, "If you need help, I'm here." Riley stared at the words, her hands trembling slightly. "I know," she whispered. "That's what scares me." "Why does that scare you?" Riley looked out the restaurant window at the dark street beyond. "Because the last time I trusted someone to help us, we almost lost everything." Grant's chest tightened. Someone had betrayed her trust. Badly. "I'm not him," Grant wrote. "I know," Riley said again. "But what if you change your mind? What if you get tired of us?" Grant reached across the table and gently covered her hand with his. Riley went perfectly still. For a moment, the whole restaurant faded away. There was only the warmth of his palm against her knuckles. The steady strength in his touch. "I won't hurt you," Grant mouthed the words without sound. Riley's tears finally spilled over. "Promise?" Grant squeezed her hand gently. "Promise." Wait, did you just feel that? That moment when Grant promised he wouldn't hurt Riley? Drop a heart emoji in the comments if you felt that protective energy too. And if you're loving this beautiful love story, smash that subscribe button because Grant and Riley's journey is just getting started, and you won't want to miss what happens when the past catches up with them. But promises, Riley knew, were easy to make. And as they said goodnight and walked toward Riley's old car, neither of them noticed the figure watching from across the street. Someone who'd been looking for Riley Monroe for 3 long years. Someone who was about to test Grant's promise in ways none of them could imagine. The magazine hit Grant's desk like a slap. Silent failure, mute mogul's disability costs investors millions. The headline screamed in bold red letters. Below it, an unflattering photo of Grant at a board meeting, his notepad visible. Grant stared at the magazine, his coffee growing cold. His assistant, Ben, stood in the doorway looking sick. "Sir, I'm so sorry. We don't know how they got those photos, or who." Grant held up his hand for silence. He didn't need to guess who. He flipped open the magazine with steady fingers, though his heart was pounding. The article was brutal. Sources close to Holloway reveal a company in crisis. Board members question whether a CEO who can't speak can lead. How can he negotiate when he can't even talk, asks one insider. Grant's jaw tightened. One insider. He knew exactly who. The article continued with quotes about his isolation and mental health issues. Private conversations twisted into weapons. But the worst part was page 3. A blurry photo of him at North and Pine, sitting across from Riley and Sky. The caption read, "Holloway's new obsession. Staff report the billionaire fixated on single mother and her daughter." Grant's vision went red. They'd made it sound sick. Predatory. They'd dragged Riley and Sky into this. His phone buzzed. A text from Lydia, "Hope you enjoyed the article. You should have been nicer to me, Grant. Hugs and kisses." Grant stared at the message, hands trembling with rage. For 3 years, he'd kept quiet about her cheating. He'd been a gentleman. And this was how she repaid him. Another text, "The board meeting is in an hour. Good luck explaining this." Grant threw his phone across the room. It smashed against the wall, pieces scattering. "Sir." Ben stepped forward carefully. "The board members are asking questions. Some want an emergency meeting." Grant grabbed his notepad and wrote furiously, "Cancel everything." "But sir, if you don't respond." "I said cancel." Grant wrote, the pen tearing through paper. Ben nodded and hurried out. Grant sank into his leather chair, the magazine still open. The photo of him with Riley and Sky mocked him from the glossy page. What would Riley think when she saw this? Would she believe the lies? Would she think he'd been using them? His chest tightened with panic. After 3 years of silence, he'd finally found people who saw him as more than his money or disability. And now Lydia had poisoned that too. Grant's intercom buzzed. "Sir. There's someone here. Says it's urgent." "Send them away." Grant started to write, then stopped. What if it was Riley? What if she'd seen the article? "Send them in," he wrote. But it wasn't Riley who walked through his office door. It was a man in an expensive suit, with cold eyes and a cruel smile. Someone Grant had never seen before, but who felt familiar. Dangerous. "Mr. Holloway," the man said, settling into the chair like he owned it. "My name is Derek Lowe. I think we need to talk." Grant frowned and wrote, "I don't know you." Derek's smile got wider. "No, but we have something in common. We both care about Riley Monroe." Grant's blood went cold. "Oh yes," Derek continued, seeing Grant's reaction. "I know all about your little Thursday dinners. Very touching, really. A rich man playing savior. What do you want?" Grant wrote, his pen shaking. "What's mine?" Derek said simply. "My daughter. And my woman." Grant's pen stopped moving. "Your daughter. Sky. Beautiful little girl. Smart too. Takes after her daddy." Grant wrote frantically, "Riley said her father left. I went away for a while. Business." Derek's eyes turned ice cold. "Prison, if you want the technical term. But I'm back now. And I want my family." "They're not your family," Grant wrote. "According to the law, they are. I have rights that don't disappear because some rich boy wants to play house." Grant stood up, his chair rolling backward. "Get out." But Derek didn't move. He pulled out his phone, showing Grant the magazine article. "Interesting timing, don't you think? This article coming out just when I happen to be looking for my family. Makes a man wonder if someone wanted you distracted." Grant's eyes narrowed. "You're behind this." "Me?" Derek looked innocent. "I'm just a concerned father. But this article makes you look pretty unstable, doesn't it? Obsessed with a woman and child who aren't yours." The pieces clicked in Grant's mind. Derek had used Lydia's anger to destroy Grant's reputation while making his own custody case stronger. "A judge might wonder," Derek continued, "if a mute billionaire with mental health issues is the right influence for a young girl. Especially when her real father is ready to provide a stable home. You're insane, Grant wrote. I'm clever, Derek corrected. And patient. I've been watching, waiting for the right moment. Now that moment is here. He stood up, straightening his tie. Stay away from my family. Or the next article will be much worse. As Derek reached the door, he turned back with that cold smile. Oh, and Mr. Holloway. Riley doesn't know I'm back yet. But she will soon. And when she sees what kind of man you really are. He gestured to the magazine. Well. She'll come running back to someone who can actually protect her. The door closed with a soft click. Grant stared at the empty chair, his hands shaking with rage and fear. Derek was right about one thing. Riley would see this article. And when she did, everything Grant had built with her and Sky would come crashing down. But what Grant didn't know was that 3 miles away, Riley was already reading the magazine. And her worst fears about trusting rich men were about to come true. Riley's hands shook as she held the magazine. She was on her lunch break at the diner when she saw it. Grant's face staring back at her from the newsstand, the headline screaming his shame for the world to see. Silent failure, mute mogul's disability costs investors millions. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was page 3. The blurry photo of her and Sky sitting across from Grant at North and Pine. The caption that made her stomach turn. Holloway's new obsession. Restaurant staff report the billionaire has become fixated on a single mother and her young daughter. Fixated. Obsessed. The words hit her like physical blows. Riley's coffee cup slipped from her numb fingers, crashing to the floor. Hot liquid splashed everywhere, but she barely noticed. Riley? You okay, honey? Asked Maria, her co-worker. But Riley couldn't speak. She kept reading, each word cutting deeper. Sources revealed disturbing details about Holloway's isolation and possible mental health issues. The wealthy CEO's inappropriate interest in restaurant staff raises serious questions about his fitness to lead. Inappropriate interest. Riley's vision blurred with tears. This was exactly what she'd feared. Exactly why she built walls around her heart. Rich men always had an angle. Oh God, she whispered, thinking of Sky. What have I done? She grabbed her purse and ran out of the diner, leaving Maria calling after her. She had to get to Sky's school. Had to protect her daughter before this got worse. But as Riley drove through Seattle traffic with shaking hands, one thought echoed in her mind. How could she have been so stupid? Grant had seemed different. Gentle. Safe. But the magazine made it clear, she'd been wrong. She'd let a rich man get close to her daughter, and now they were both exposed. Riley's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the article. We need to talk. Meet me at Pike Place Market in 1 hour. Come alone. D. Riley's blood went ice cold. D. There was only one person in her life who signed messages with just D. Derek. He was back. And he'd seen the article too. This was a nightmare. Derek was out of prison, Grant was apparently some kind of predator, and Sky was caught in the middle. At 6 p.m., Riley arrived at North and Pine for her evening shift. Her manager, Carlos, was waiting with a grim expression. Riley, we need to talk, he said. Her heart sank. Am I fired? Not fired. But. Carlos showed her his phone. The same article. This is bad publicity. Maybe you should take some time off. Until this blows over. Riley nodded numbly. She understood. The fancy restaurant couldn't afford to be associated with whatever sick story the magazine was painting. As she gathered her things, Riley's phone rang. Sky's school. Ms. Monroe. This is Principal Williams. Is everything all right? A man was here asking about Sky. Said he was her father. Riley's knees nearly gave out. What did you tell him? Nothing, of course. We have strict instructions that only you can pick up Sky. But he was persistent. I'm coming to get her now, Riley said, already running. 20 minutes later, she was holding Sky tight in the school parking lot. Mama, what's wrong? Sky asked, sensing her mother's panic. We have to go home, baby. Right now. But what about Mr. Grant? It's Thursday. Don't we have dinner? Riley's heart broke. How could she explain? That the man Sky had grown to love was apparently using them? That her real father, the man who'd hurt them both, was back. Not tonight, sweetheart. But I made him a new crane. Sky pulled the paper bird from her backpack. This one was purple, folded with extra care. Riley stared at the tiny crane. Such a simple thing. But it represented everything that was about to be destroyed. We can't see Mr. Grant anymore, Riley said, the words tasting like poison. Why not? Sky's eyes filled with tears. Because. Riley struggled for words an 8-year-old could understand. Because sometimes grown-ups aren't who we think they are. But Mr. Grant is good, Mama. He's lonely like we were. He needs us. No, baby. He doesn't need us. We were just. Riley's voice cracked. We were just entertainment for him. Sky shook her head violently. That's not true. Mr. Grant loves us. Love. The word Riley had been too scared to say, even to herself. Sometimes love isn't real, Sky. Sometimes it's just pretend. They drove home in silence, Sky clutching her purple crane. At 7:30 p.m., their usual time, Grant sat alone in booth 7. He'd been there for an hour, waiting. Hoping. Praying that somehow Riley hadn't seen the article. That she would walk through those doors with Sky's bright smile and everything would be okay. But the doors stayed closed. At 8 p.m., Marcus approached his table carefully. Mr. Holloway. Should I keep waiting, or? Grant stared at the empty booth across from him. At the breadstick basket he'd ordered for Sky. At the space where their laughter used to fill the silence. They weren't coming. Riley had seen the article. And she believed it. Grant pulled out his notepad with shaking hands. Can you deliver something for me? Marcus nodded. Grant reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out all 5 paper cranes. White, yellow, red, blue, and white again. Each one a memory. Each one a moment when he'd felt truly happy. He placed them gently on the table and wrote an address on his notepad. Riley's address. Give these to Riley Monroe. Tell her I kept my promise. Marcus looked confused but took the cranes carefully. As Grant watched the waiter walk away with the only light he'd known in 3 years, he felt the familiar darkness closing in. He'd been a fool to think someone like Riley could really care about someone like him. He'd been a fool to think he deserved happiness. But what Grant didn't know was that at that exact moment, Riley was sitting in her tiny apartment, staring at an envelope that had been slipped under her door. An envelope containing custody papers and a note in handwriting she recognized. I'm back, Riley. And I'm taking what's mine. You should have been more careful about the company you keep. D. The battle for Sky was just beginning. And Grant's betrayal, real or imagined, had left Riley completely alone to fight it. At 11:47 p.m., someone knocked on Grant's penthouse door. Grant looked up from his desk, confused. He'd been sitting there for hours, staring at his laptop without seeing it. His security system showed no alerts. No one was scheduled to visit. The knock came again. Softer this time. Almost desperate. Grant walked to the door and checked the security monitor. His heart stopped. Riley stood in his hallway, soaked from Seattle's rain. Her hair was plastered to her head, clothes dripping water. And in her arms, wrapped in a thin blanket, was Sky. Sky was asleep, her small body curled against her mother's chest. Even unconscious, she looked scared. Grant's hands shook as he unlocked the door. Multiple locks, he'd installed them after receiving death threats. But tonight, they felt like barriers between him and the people he loved. The door swung open. Riley looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. She'd been crying for hours. "I was wrong," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "God help me, I was so wrong." Grant stared at her, not understanding. "Wrong about what?" "The article," Riley continued, shivering. "I believed it. I thought you were. I thought." She couldn't finish. Fresh tears mixed with the rainwater on her cheeks. Grant stepped aside, gesturing for them to come in. Riley hesitated for just a moment, then crossed the threshold into his warm, dry apartment. Grant led them to his living room, 20 feet of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Leather furniture that cost more than most people's cars. But all Riley could focus on was how quiet it was. How empty. How lonely. "She's been asking for you all evening," Riley said, adjusting Sky's sleeping form. "Crying because she couldn't understand why we weren't going to see you." Grant's throat tightened. He pulled out his phone and typed, "What changed your mind?" Riley looked at the message, then at him. Really looked. At the pain in his eyes. The exhaustion. The way he held himself like he was waiting for another blow. "Derek came to the apartment tonight," she said. Grant went perfectly still. He had custody papers. Legal documents saying he had rights to Sky. He said. Riley's voice broke. "He said the article proved I was an unfit mother. That I was letting strange men around my daughter." Grant typed furiously, "He's behind this. The article, the timing, all of it." Riley nodded. "I figured that out when he started bragging. About how easy it was to get your ex-fiancée to talk. How he'd been planning this for months. Are you safe?" Grant typed. "I don't know," Riley whispered. "He said he'd give me until morning to think about it. Either I come back to him willingly, or he'll take Sky through the courts." Grant's hands clenched into fists. "Over my dead body." "You don't understand," Riley said. "He has money now. A good lawyer. And after that article." She gestured helplessly. "Who's going to believe me? A single mother working 2 jobs versus a man with legal documents?" Grant stood up and walked to his desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. Inside were photographs, bank records, police reports. "I had him investigated the moment he left my office," Grant typed. "Derek Lowe. 5 years in prison for fraud and assault. Multiple restraining orders. Outstanding warrants in 3 states." Riley's eyes went wide. "You investigated him?" "I protect what I love," Grant typed. The words hung in the air between them. Love. He'd said it so simply, so matter-of-factly. "Grant." Riley's voice was soft. "I know you don't trust rich men," he typed. "I know someone hurt you before. But I'm not him, Riley. I would die before I let anyone hurt you or Sky." Riley looked down at her sleeping daughter, then back at Grant. "I know. I think I've known all along. But I was so scared." "Of what?" "Of this," she whispered, gesturing around his penthouse. "Of caring about someone who lives in a completely different world. Of what happens when you get tired of us." Grant knelt in front of her chair, his eyes level with hers. "I will never get tired of you. Either of you. How can you be sure?" Grant reached into his jacket pocket, the same one where he'd kept all the cranes. But instead of paper birds, he pulled out something else. 5 tiny paper cranes, but these were different. They were laminated. Preserved. Protected. You kept them. Riley breathed. I had them professionally preserved, Grant typed. So they would last forever. Like my promise to you. Riley's tears started again, but these were different tears. Relief. Hope. Love. Sky stirred in her arms, opening sleepy eyes. Mama? Where are we? We're safe, baby, Riley whispered. We're with Grant. Sky looked around the big room, then at Grant kneeling beside them. Her face broke into a tired but happy smile. Mr. Grant, she signed sleepily. I was scared you were gone. Grant's eyes filled with tears. I'm right here, he signed back. I'll always be right here. Can we stay tonight? Sky asked. I don't want to go home. Riley looked at Grant questioningly. He nodded immediately. You can stay as long as you need, he typed. Both of you. The spare bedroom has its own bathroom, Grant continued typing. Clean towels in the closet. Food in the kitchen. This is your home now. Home. The word made Riley's chest ache with happiness she'd forgotten was possible. Grant, she said softly. About the article. Lies, he typed. All of it. Derek used Lydia's anger to destroy both our reputations. But we'll fight back. How? Grant smiled, his real smile, the one reserved only for them. Together. As Riley carried Sky toward the guest room, the little girl looked back at Grant over her mother's shoulder. Mr. Grant, she signed. Tomorrow is Friday. Grant nodded. Can we still have dinner together? Even if it's not Thursday. Grant's throat made that rusty sound, his almost laugh. We can have dinner together every day if you want. Promise? Sky asked. Grant touched the pocket where the preserved cranes waited. Promise. But as Riley tucked Sky into the softest bed she'd ever felt, none of them knew that 20 floors below, Derek Lowe was sitting in a rental car, staring up at Grant's penthouse windows. Waiting. Watching. Planning his next move. The real war was just beginning. Friday morning arrived like a storm. Riley woke up in the softest bed she'd ever slept in, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back. Derek. The custody papers. The choice he'd given her. She checked her phone. 3 missed calls and a text, time's up, Riley. Bring my daughter home, or I'm calling my lawyer. Riley's hands shook as she read the message. In the next room, she could hear Sky giggling, actually giggling, as she talked to Grant. Good morning, Mama. Sky called out when Riley emerged from the bedroom. The sight that greeted her stopped Riley's heart. Grant was sitting cross-legged on his expensive living room floor, still in his pajamas and robe. Spread out around him were coloring books, crayons, and at least 20 paper cranes in every color imaginable. Mr. Grant taught me how to make rainbow cranes. Sky announced proudly. Look. She held up a crane folded from paper that shifted from purple to pink to orange. It was beautiful. Grant looked up at Riley and typed on his phone. She was awake at 6 a.m. I hope you don't mind. Riley's heart melted. This billionaire, this man who commanded boardrooms and moved millions, was sitting on his floor having a tea party with her 8-year-old daughter. Mind? Riley's voice caught. Thank you. But before Grant could respond, his intercom buzzed. His doorman's voice crackled through. Mr. Holloway, there's a gentleman here to see you. Says his name is Derek Lowe. Claims it's about custody of a minor. The temperature in the room plummeted. Sky looked confused. Who's Derek? Riley's face went white. She'd never told Sky her father's real name. In Sky's world, her daddy was just the man who went away. Grant stood up quickly, typing, "Tell him Mr. Holloway is not available." "Sir," the doorman continued, "he says he has legal documents. And he's not alone. There are 2 police officers with him." Riley sank onto the couch, her legs giving out. "He actually did it. He called the police." "What does that mean?" Grant typed frantically. "It means he's claiming I kidnapped my own daughter. That I'm keeping her from her legal father." Sky's eyes went wide with fear. "Mama, I don't want to go with strangers." "You won't, baby," Riley said, but her voice shook. Grant was already moving, grabbing the manila folder from his desk. "We have evidence. His criminal record. The fraud conviction. But what if it's not enough?" Riley whispered. "What if they believe him?" The intercom buzzed again. "Sir, they're demanding to come up. The officers say they have a court order." Grant's jaw tightened. He walked to the intercom and pressed a button. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, but it was there. "Send them up." Riley gasped. It was the first time she'd heard Grant's actual voice. Rough, damaged, but real. "Grant, you spoke," she breathed. "For you," he typed. "For Sky. I'll find my voice again if that's what it takes." 3 minutes later, heavy knocks echoed through the penthouse. Grant opened the door to reveal 2 uniformed police officers and the man Riley had hoped never to see again. Derek Lowe looked exactly the same. Expensive suit hiding a cruel heart. Perfect smile masking dead eyes. Handsome face that had once fooled her into thinking she was safe. "Hello, Riley," Derek said smoothly. "You look good." "Scared, but good." "Get away from us," Riley whispered, pulling Sky behind her. Now. Is that any way to greet the father of your child?" Derek's voice was honey over poison. One of the officers stepped forward. "Ma'am, we need to discuss the welfare of the minor child. There's been a report of parental interference." "Parental interference?" Riley's voice cracked. "I'm her mother." "And I'm her father," Derek said, pulling out official-looking papers. "With legal rights that have been violated." Grant moved protectively in front of Riley and Sky. He typed rapidly, "This man is a convicted felon with outstanding warrants." The officer read the phone screen. "Sir, and you are?" "Grant Holloway. This is my home. These people are under my protection." Derek laughed coldly. "Your protection? You're the reason we're here, Mr. Holloway. Exposing my family to an unstable man with an unhealthy obsession." "That's a lie," Riley said, finding her voice. "Is it?" Derek pulled out his own phone, showing the officers the magazine article. "Mute billionaire becomes fixated on single mother and child." Sounds pretty unhealthy to me. Sky tugged on Riley's shirt. "Mama, who is this man? Why is he being mean?" Derek's expression softened as he looked at Sky, the fake kindness Riley remembered so well. "Hello, princess," he said, kneeling to her level. "I'm your daddy. Remember? Daddy's back now." Sky shrank back against Riley's legs. "You're not my daddy. My daddy was nice. I am nice, sweetheart. I just had to go away for work. But now I'm here to take you home." "This is my home," Sky said firmly, looking at Grant. "With Mr. Grant and Mama." Derek's mask slipped for just a second, showing the rage underneath. "We'll see about that." The first officer cleared his throat. "Look, this is getting complicated. We're going to need everyone to come down to the station." "No," Riley said desperately. "You don't understand. He's dangerous. Ma'am, he has custody documents. Grant suddenly stepped forward and spoke again, his damaged voice stronger this time. "Officer, check his warrants." He handed over the manila folder. "Fraud, assault, multiple states." The second officer took the folder, flipping through the documents. His expression changed as he read. "Derek Lowe?" he asked. "Born March 15, 1985. "That's me," Derek said, but his confidence was slipping. "Sir, you have outstanding warrants in Oregon and California. I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back." "What?" Derek's perfect composure cracked. "This is ridiculous. I'm here for my daughter." "Sir, turn around now." But Derek wasn't done. As the officer reached for his handcuffs, Derek lunged toward Sky. "If I can't have her, nobody can," Riley screamed. Grant moved faster than anyone thought possible, stepping between Derek and Sky. Derek's fist connected with Grant's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. That's when something amazing happened. Grant Holloway, the mute billionaire who hadn't raised his voice in 3 years, roared. Not words. Just sound. Pure, protective rage that echoed through the penthouse like thunder. Both officers immediately tackled Derek, wrestling him to the ground as he fought and cursed. "Nobody touches my family," Grant said clearly, his voice getting stronger with each word. "Nobody." Sky stared at Grant in wonder. "Mr. Grant, you're talking." "For you," Grant said, his voice rough but real. "I'll always talk for you." As the officers dragged Derek toward the door in handcuffs, he looked back at Riley with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he snarled. "I'll get out. And when I do—" "No," Grant said firmly. "You won't." The door slammed shut. For a moment, the penthouse was perfectly quiet. Then Sky ran to Grant, throwing her small arms around his legs. "You saved us," she said, looking up at him with shining eyes. Grant knelt down to her level and spoke carefully. "We saved each other." Riley watched them, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of fear this time. Tears of relief. Of gratitude. Of love. But what none of them knew was that Derek's arrest was just the beginning. Because men like Derek Lowe always had backup plans. And his was about to tear their new family apart in ways they never saw coming. 10 minutes after the police left, Grant was on the phone. His voice was getting stronger with each word, like a muscle remembering how to work. "Ben, I need you here. Now. Bring everything." Riley sat on the couch, still shaking from the confrontation. Sky was curled up next to her, clutching one of her rainbow cranes. "Is the bad man coming back?" Sky asked quietly. "No, baby," Riley said, but her voice wasn't sure. Grant hung up and walked over to them. His jaw was already swelling where Derek had hit him, but he didn't seem to notice. "He won't come back," Grant said clearly. "I promise you that." "How can you be sure?" Riley asked. Grant's smile was different now. Not gentle like before. This smile had steel in it. "Because I'm about to make sure he can't." 20 minutes later, Ben Harlow arrived carrying 3 thick briefcases. He was a thin man with sharp eyes and expensive suits, Grant's most trusted advisor. "Jesus, what happened to your face?" Ben asked, seeing Grant's bruise. "Derek Lowe happened," Grant said. "And now we're going to make sure it never happens again." Ben set the briefcases on Grant's dining table and opened them. Inside were laptops, legal documents, and phones. "Tell me what you need," Ben said. Grant's eyes were ice cold. "I need Derek Lowe destroyed. Legally. Completely. Forever." For the next hour, Riley and Sky watched in amazement as Grant transformed from gentle billionaire into something else entirely. Something dangerous. First, Grant said, his voice getting stronger by the minute, check his bail status. Ben typed furiously on his laptop. He's being held without bail. The warrants were for violent crimes. Good. But that won't hold him forever. What about the custody papers? Fake, Ben said, pulling up documents on his screen. The signatures are forged. The court seal is counterfeit. Riley's eyes went wide. He can't actually take Sky. He never could, Grant said firmly. It was all a con. Intimidation tactics. But what happens when he gets out of jail? Riley asked. Grant's smile turned sharp. He won't. Over the next 2 hours, Riley watched Grant orchestrate something that looked like magic. Phone call after phone call. Email after email. Favors called in from judges, prosecutors, and FBI agents. Maria Santos, please. Hi Maria, it's Grant Holloway. I need a favor. Judge Morrison. Grant here. I have information about a fugitive you've been looking for. Agent Chen, this is important. I have evidence of interstate fraud. With each call, Grant's net tightened around Derek. What's happening? Riley asked during a quiet moment. Justice, Grant said simply. Real justice. Ben looked up from his laptop. Oregon wants him for embezzlement. California wants him for assault. And now Washington has him for fraud and attempted kidnapping. How long? Grant asked. 15 to 20 years. Minimum. Riley's knees went weak with relief. 20 years. If we're lucky, Grant said. But I'm not done yet. He made one more call. This one was different. Quieter. More dangerous. It's Grant. I need information on someone. Everything you can find. Money is no object. When he hung up, Ben was staring at him. Grant, what did you just do? I hired the best private investigator on the West Coast. By tomorrow, we'll know every crime Derek has ever committed. Every person he's hurt. Every law he's broken. Why? Riley asked. Grant knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands gently. Because men like Derek don't stop, he said. Even from prison, he'll try to hurt you. Try to get to Sky. So I'm going to make sure he's too busy fighting charges in multiple states to even think about you. Riley stared into his eyes. You're doing all this, for us. I'm doing this because I love you, Grant said simply. Both of you. And nobody hurts the people I love. Sky looked up from her crane. Mr. Grant, are you really rich? Grant laughed, his first real laugh since finding his voice again. Yes, sweetheart. Very rich. Rich enough to keep bad men away. Rich enough to keep you safe forever, Grant promised. As evening fell, Ben packed up his briefcases. The work was done. Derek's fate was sealed. There's one more thing, Ben said at the door. The magazine that ran the article. Their main investor just pulled out. They'll probably shut down within a month. Riley frowned. Why would an investor pull out? Ben glanced at Grant, who was trying not to smile. Let's just say, they received some very convincing financial arguments, Ben said carefully. After Ben left, the three of them sat together on Grant's couch, watching the Seattle skyline light up outside. Is it really over? Riley asked. The legal part is, Grant said. But Riley. He turned to face her fully. I need you to know something. Today changed me. Getting my voice back, protecting you both. I'm not the same man I was yesterday. What do you mean? I mean I've spent 3 years feeling powerless. But today I remembered what I'm capable of. What my money and connections can really do. Riley felt a chill. Should that scare me? Grant was quiet for a long moment. "It should scare Derek," he said finally. "And anyone else who ever tries to hurt my family." Sky yawned and curled up against Grant's side. "Mr. Grant?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm glad you can talk now. But I liked you when you were quiet too." Grant's expression softened. "Why?" "Because quiet people listen better. And you always listen to me." Grant's eyes filled with tears. "I'll always listen to you, Sky. With or without words." As Riley tucked Sky into bed that night, her daughter asked a question that made her heart stop. "Mama, are we going to live here forever?" "I don't know, baby. We'll see." "I hope so," Sky said sleepily. "I want Mr. Grant to be my real daddy." Riley's breath caught. Real daddy. But as she kissed Sky goodnight, one thought echoed in her mind: what if Grant's power, the same power that had saved them today, eventually consumed the gentleman she'd fallen in love with? Tomorrow would bring answers. But tonight, for the first time in years, they were truly safe. Stop everything. Grant just used his billions to protect his family like a boss. Comment: choose love if you're proud of this man right now. This is why I love sharing these stories with you amazing people, because love should always win. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We're about to find out what happens when true love meets real power, and you deserve to be here for it. The package arrived Saturday morning while Riley was making pancakes. Grant's doorman called up, "Mr. Holloway, there's a delivery for you. The sender says it's urgent." "Send it up," Grant said, his voice still rough but getting stronger. 5 minutes later, Grant was staring at a manila envelope with no return address. Inside were photographs, hotel receipts, and a note written in shaky handwriting. "Mr. Holloway, I worked as a private investigator for your ex-fiancée. She paid me to follow you and gather dirt. But what I found was her cheating with your business partner. She threatened to ruin me if I told you. Now that you found your voice again, I thought you should know the truth. A friend." Grant's hands trembled as he spread the evidence across his dining table. Photo after photo of Lydia with Marcus Chen, his chief operating officer. Coming out of hotels together. Holding hands in restaurants. Kissing in parking garages. Bank records showing payments to the private investigator. Payments to the magazine editor who ran the smear article. Even payments to a fake custody lawyer, the one who'd helped Derek create those forged papers. "Grant?" Riley called from the kitchen. "Everything okay?" Grant couldn't answer. His throat felt tight with rage. For 8 months, he'd trusted Lydia with his heart. He'd planned to marry her. And she'd been planning to destroy him the entire time. "Mr. Grant?" Sky appeared beside him, carrying her plate of pancakes. "Why do you look angry?" Grant looked down at her innocent face and felt his rage shift into something colder. More focused. "Someone lied to me, sweetheart. Someone I trusted." "That's mean," Sky said simply. "Lying is bad." "Yes, it is." Riley came over, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She saw the photos spread across the table and gasped. "Is that Lydia?" Grant said. "My ex-fiancée. With my business partner." Riley picked up one of the photos. It showed Lydia and Marcus Chen in an intimate embrace outside a 5-star hotel. "She was cheating on you," Riley said softly. 4 months. Maybe longer. Grant's voice was ice cold. "And she was working with Derek to destroy both of us." Riley studied the bank records. "These payments, she paid someone to investigate you. To find dirt. When they couldn't find any, she made it up. The article, the photos, the twisted story about me being obsessed, all lies." Sky tugged on Grant's shirt. "Mr. Grant, are you going to punish the mean lady?" Grant looked down at her, then at Riley. What do you think I should do? I think, Riley said carefully, that people who hurt others should face consequences. Grant nodded. He pulled out his phone and started typing. Ben, I need you again. Bring the lawyers. All of them. We're going to war. 2 hours later, Grant's penthouse looked like a military command center. 3 lawyers, 2 accountants, and Ben sat around the dining table, reviewing evidence. This is more than enough for a lawsuit, said Sarah Martinez, Grant's lead attorney. Defamation, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress. I don't want money, Grant said. I want justice. What kind of justice? Asked David Park, his corporate lawyer. Grant's smile was sharp as a blade. I want Lydia Crane and Marcus Chen to understand what happens when you betray someone who has the resources to fight back. Over the next hour, Grant laid out his plan. First, Marcus Chen would be fired immediately. His corporate access revoked, his stock options cancelled, his non-compete clauses activated. He'll never work in Seattle again, Grant said with satisfaction. Second, Lydia would face a massive lawsuit for fraud and defamation. Not just against Grant, but against Riley and Sky too. She dragged a child into this, Grant said, his voice getting dangerous. She made Sky's picture part of her sick game. That's unforgivable. Third, the magazine would be sued into bankruptcy. The editor who published the lies would be exposed publicly. I want everyone to know what happens when you print lies about innocent people, Grant said. Riley listened with growing amazement. In just 2 days, she'd watched Grant transform from gentle, quiet man into something else entirely. A protector. A warrior. There's one more thing, Grant said to his legal team. I want to make a public statement. With my voice. On camera. Sarah looked surprised. Are you sure? You don't have to. Yes, I do. Grant stood up, his decision made. For 3 years, I let people speak for me. Not anymore. He looked at Riley and Sky. I want the world to know who I really am. And who my family is. That afternoon, Grant held his first press conference since the accident. Standing behind a podium in his corporate headquarters, with Riley and Sky beside him, Grant faced a room full of reporters and cameras. His voice was still rough, but it was strong. Clear. Real. 3 years ago, I lost my voice in an accident, he began. Today, I found it again. And the first thing I want to say is this, I am not the man described in that magazine article. Flash bulbs popped. Reporters scribbled notes. I am not obsessed. I am not mentally unstable. I am not unfit to lead. I am a man who was lied about by people I trusted. He gestured to Riley and Sky. This is Riley Monroe and her daughter Sky. They are not victims of my obsession. They are the reason I found my voice again. They showed me that silence doesn't mean weakness. That family doesn't always come from blood, sometimes it comes from choice. Riley's eyes filled with tears. Today, I'm announcing several lawsuits against the people who created and spread lies. I'm also announcing that Riley Monroe will be joining Holloway Capital as our new Director of Community Outreach. Riley gasped. He hadn't told her about this. And finally, Grant said, his voice cracking with emotion, I want to thank 2 people for saving my life. Sky Monroe, who taught me that paper cranes can carry hopes. And Riley Monroe, who taught me that love doesn't need words to be real. The room erupted with questions, but Grant was done talking. He'd said everything that mattered. As they left the press conference, Sky tugged on Grant's hand. Mr. Grant, what's a Director of Community Outreach? Grant smiled down at her. It means your mama gets to help other families like ours. Families who need someone to believe in them. And we get to stay with you? Sky asked hopefully. Grant knelt down to her level. Forever, if you want. I want, Sky said immediately. But can I ask you something? Anything. When you marry Mama, can I help plan the wedding? Riley's face went bright red. Sky. But Grant was laughing, that beautiful, rusty sound that meant pure joy. Sweetheart, he said, you can plan the whole thing. As they walked out of the building together, none of them noticed the figure watching from across the street. Someone who'd seen the press conference. Someone who now knew exactly where to find them. Someone with a plan that would test everything Grant had just promised. Sunday morning started with a phone call that changed everything. Riley was making coffee in Grant's kitchen when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello, she answered cautiously. Heavy breathing. Then a voice she'd hoped never to hear again. Hello, beautiful. Riley's coffee mug crashed to the floor. Derek? How are you? You're in jail. Posted bail an hour ago, baby. Amazing what good lawyers can do. Riley's legs gave out. She grabbed the counter for support. That's impossible. Grant said. Grant doesn't know everything. Derek's voice was silk over steel. Rich boy made some enemies when he destroyed that magazine. Turns out the editor has friends. Friends with money. Riley looked around frantically. Grant was in his office on a business call. Sky was watching cartoons in the living room. What do you want? Riley whispered. What I've always wanted. My family back. Sky isn't yours. You lost that right when you went to prison. Derek laughed coldly. See, that's where you're wrong. I've been talking to expensive lawyers. A man has rights to his biological child. You broke my wrist. Ancient history. What matters now is the future. Our future. Riley heard footsteps. Grant was coming back. I have to go, she whispered. No. You're going to listen very carefully. Derek's voice turned dangerous. Meet me at Pike Place Market today. Noon. Bring Sky. We'll have a nice family reunion. I won't. You will. Because if you don't, I'll take her anyway. And next time, your rich boyfriend won't be there to protect you. The line went dead. Riley stood frozen in the kitchen, phone in her shaking hands. Riley? Grant's voice made her jump. Everything okay? She turned to face him, trying to hide her terror. Fine. Just, wrong number. But Grant knew her too well now. He saw the fear in her eyes, the way her hands trembled. What happened? He asked, stepping closer. Nothing, Riley's voice broke. Derek called. He's out. He wants to meet. Grant's expression went ice cold. What did he say? Riley told him everything. The threats. The demand to meet at Pike Place Market. The promise to take Sky one way or another. When she finished, Grant was perfectly still. Dangerously calm. He's not getting near you, Grant said quietly. Either of you. But what if he? Riley. Grant took her hands. Look at me. She did, seeing something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Complete certainty. Absolute protection. I will not let anything happen to you or Sky. Do you believe me? Riley nodded, unable to speak. Good. Now here's what we're going to do. Over the next hour, Grant laid out a plan that sounded like something from a spy movie. First, he called his head of security, a former FBI agent named Torres. I need a full protection detail. 3 teams. Best people you have. Next, he called his friend at the Seattle Police Department. Detective Walsh. It's Grant Holloway. I need a favor. Then came the most important part. Grant sat Sky down and explained in words an 8-year-old could understand. Remember Derek? The bad man from yesterday? Sky nodded, her eyes wide. He might try to trick you today. But I need you to remember something very important. Grant reached into his pocket and pulled out a small red paper crane. If you see him anywhere, you drop this crane. Anywhere. On the ground, out a window, wherever. Can you do that for me? Why? Sky asked. Because when you drop this crane, help will come. I promise. Grant's security team spent the morning setting up what Torres called the web. Undercover agents positioned around Pike Place Market. Plainclothes police officers mixed in with tourists. Surveillance cameras tracking every entrance and exit. If Derek shows up anywhere near that market, we'll know, Torres explained. But Grant wasn't taking any chances. We're not just defending, he told Riley. We're hunting. At 11:30 a.m., Riley and Sky left Grant's penthouse in his armored SUV. To anyone watching, it looked like they were going to the market as demanded. But 50 feet behind them, invisible in traffic, followed 3 more vehicles full of Grant's security team. This feels like overkill, Riley said into her earpiece. Nothing is overkill when it comes to protecting you, Grant's voice came back crystal clear. They parked at Pike Place Market at exactly noon. Riley held Sky's hand tight as they walked through the crowded tourist area. Fish vendors calling out prices. Street musicians playing for tips. The smell of fresh flowers and coffee. Everything looked normal. But Riley could feel eyes watching them. I don't see him, she whispered into her mic. We do, came Torres' voice. Northeast corner, by the flower stand. Baseball cap and sunglasses. Riley's heart hammered. Should we run? No, Grant's voice was calm. Stick to the plan. Walk toward the fish market. They moved slowly through the crowd, Sky chattering about the flying fish and colorful flowers. To anyone watching, they looked like tourists. But Riley's hand was tight around the red crane in her pocket. At 12:15, Derek made his move. He appeared beside them so suddenly that Riley gasped. Hello, girls, he said smoothly. Miss me? Go away, Riley said loudly, hoping the microphone picked it up. Come here, princess, Derek reached for Sky. Daddy wants to show you something. But Sky stepped behind Riley, her small hand finding the red crane. You're not my daddy, she said clearly. My daddy wouldn't scare my mama. Derek's mask slipped. Listen, you little. That's when Sky dropped the crane. The small red paper bird fluttered to the concrete, landing right at Derek's feet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. Security agents emerged from the crowd like ghosts. Torres appeared behind Derek with 2 other men. Police officers closed in from every direction. But Derek was faster than they expected. He grabbed Riley's arm and yanked her toward him, pulling her against his chest. Stay back, he yelled, his other arm going around her throat. I've got nothing to lose here. Riley felt something sharp against her ribs. A knife. Let her go, Lo, Torres called out, his weapon drawn. Not happening. Me and my girls are walking out of here. No, said a voice that cut through the chaos like a blade. Grant appeared through the crowd, walking straight toward them with no fear, no hesitation. Grant, don't. Riley gasped. But Grant kept coming, his eyes locked on Derek. You want to hurt someone? Grant said, his voice carrying across the market. Hurt me. Stay back, rich boy, or I'll cut her. Grant stopped 10 feet away. No, you won't. What makes you so sure? Grant smiled, and it was terrifying. Because if you hurt one hair on her head, I will spend every dollar I have, use every connection I own, and dedicate the rest of my life to destroying you. Not just legally. Personally. Derek's grip loosened slightly. You're bluffing. Am I? Grant's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow everyone could hear. Ask yourself this, Derek. What do you think a man with unlimited resources can do to someone who hurts the woman he loves? For a moment, Derek hesitated. And that was all Torres needed. He moved like lightning, grabbing Derek's knife hand while another agent tackled him from behind. Riley stumbled forward, free. Grant caught her in his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. It's over, he whispered in her ear. It's finally over. But as the police dragged Derek away in handcuffs, he looked back at Grant with pure hatred. This isn't over, Holloway, he screamed. Grant's response was quiet, but everyone heard it. Watch me. Monday morning brought the fight Grant had been dreading. The emergency board meeting was set for 9 a.m. sharp. 12 of the most powerful people in Seattle, all questioning whether a man who'd just gotten his voice back could still lead Holloway Capital. You don't have to do this, Riley said as Grant adjusted his tie. Yes, I do, Grant replied. If I can't prove I'm fit to lead, they'll vote me out. But you own the company. I own 45%. They control 55% combined. If they unite against me. Grant's jaw tightened. I lose everything. Skye looked up from her cereal bowl. What happens if you lose, Mr. Grant? Grant knelt beside her chair. If I lose, sweetheart, we might have to find a new home. But this is our home now, Skye said, confused. I know. And I'm going to fight to keep it that way. At 8:45 a.m., Grant walked into the Holloway Capital boardroom for the first time since the magazine article. The tension was thick enough to cut. 12 faces stared at him from around the mahogany conference table. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked ready for blood. Good morning, Grant said clearly, taking his seat at the head of the table. Murmurs rippled through the room. Several board members looked shocked, they hadn't expected him to speak. Margaret Winters, the board's senior member, cleared her throat. Grant, we appreciate you coming. But we have serious concerns about recent events. I'm sure you do, Grant replied calmly. The magazine article raised questions about your mental stability, said Robert Nash, his voice dripping with fake concern. Your alleged obsession with restaurant staff. Your fitness to lead a $15 billion company. That article was full of lies, Grant said firmly. Written by my ex-fiancée to damage my reputation. So you claim, Nash continued. But the optics are terrible. Investors are nervous. Stock prices dropped 8%. Grant felt his phone buzz. A text from Ben, the software demo is ready. Are you sure about this? Grant typed back, do it. Robert raises valid concerns, said Patricia Stone. How do we know this won't happen again? How do we trust a CEO who can't even speak consistently? Grant stood up slowly. You want to know if I can lead? Let me show you. He walked to the wall monitor and pressed a button. The screen lit up with a video conference call. On screen appeared Dr. Sarah Kim from Stanford University, along with 3 software engineers. Board members, Grant said, meet the team that's about to revolutionize how the world communicates. Dr. Kim leaned forward. Good morning. What you're about to see is technology that Mr. Holloway commissioned and funded entirely from his personal fortune. The engineers began their demonstration. On screen, one of them began signing in American Sign Language. As his hands moved, a computer program tracked every gesture and translated it instantly into spoken words. But that was just the beginning. The program then displayed those words as text in real time. Not just in English, but in Spanish, Mandarin, French, and 12 other languages simultaneously. The boardroom fell completely silent. This software, Dr. Kim continued, will allow deaf and mute individuals to communicate instantly with anyone, anywhere. No barriers. No limitations. Grant stepped forward. 3 years ago, I lost my voice. I could have retreated. Instead, I chose to build bridges. He gestured to the screen. This technology will be released free to every hospital, school, and community center in America. Completely free. Margaret Winter's eyes were wide. Free. Grant, this must have cost millions. 12 million, Grant said simply. And it was worth every penny. Robert Nash leaned forward. This is impressive, Grant, but nothing, Grant interrupted. You want to know if I can lead? You want to know if my disability makes me weak? Grant walked around the table, making eye contact with each board member. Let me tell you what I've learned in 3 years of silence. I've learned to listen. Really listen. I've learned that strength doesn't come from volume, it comes from understanding. He stopped at the head of the table. I've also learned that the most important business decisions aren't made in boardrooms. They're made in moments when someone needs help. When a child needs protection. When a family needs saving. Grant's voice got stronger with each word. You think my personal life is a distraction? My personal life is my motivation. Riley and Sky didn't just give me back my voice, they gave me back my purpose. He pressed another button. The screen changed to show, Holloway Foundation for Communication Accessibility. While you were worried about stock prices, I was building our future. A foundation that will help millions communicate who never could before. Patricia Stone was staring at the screen. Grant, this is incredible. And it's just the beginning, Grant said. Riley Monroe. She's going to run this foundation. She understands what it means to fight for your family. Grant looked around the table. So here's my question. Do you want a CEO who hides from problems? Or do you want a leader who turns obstacles into opportunities? Margaret Winters spoke first. Grant, I owe you an apology. We all do. No apologies needed, Grant said. Just support. This technology launches next month. The foundation starts in 6 weeks. I need to know if you're with me. Robert Nash looked uncomfortable. Grant, this is all very noble, but what about profits? Shareholders expect. He was interrupted by a knock on the boardroom door. Ben Harlow entered with a tablet in his hands. Excuse me, Ben said breathlessly. But you all need to see this. He placed the tablet on the table. The screen showed breaking news, tech giants rushed to license Holloway's communication software. Apple called 15 minutes ago, Ben continued. They want to integrate the software into every iPhone. Google wants it for Android. Microsoft is offering $200 million just for licensing rights. The boardroom erupted in amazed murmurs. $200 million. Patricia gasped. That's just Microsoft, Ben said. Apple's offer is $300 million. And Google is offering $500 million. Grant smiled. Still worried about profits, Robert? Robert Nash's face was red. No, I'm not. Then let's take a vote, Margaret said. All in favor of Grant Holloway continuing as CEO? Every hand in the room shot up. Even Robert Nash's. Unanimous, Margaret announced. Grant, you have our full support. As the board members filed out, shaking Grant's hand and congratulating him, Margaret stayed behind. Grant, can I ask you something personal? Of course. That little girl, Sky. At the press conference, she looked at you like. Like what? Margaret's eyes were soft. Like you were her hero. But more than that. Like you were her father. Grant's throat tightened. They both mean everything to me. I can tell. And Grant? For what it's worth, I think you're going to be an amazing father. After everyone left, Grant sat alone in the boardroom for a moment, letting the victory sink in. His phone buzzed. A text from Riley, how did it go? Grant smiled and typed back, we won. All of us. But as Grant walked toward the elevator, he didn't notice the janitor in the corner, emptying trash cans. The janitor who'd been listening to every word. The janitor who pulled out a phone as soon as Grant left and made a call. "It's done," the janitor said quietly. "I got everything. The technology demo, the foundation plans, the licensing deals. Everything." A familiar voice answered, "Perfect. Now we move to phase 2. Because some enemies don't give up. They just get smarter." The headlines hit Tuesday morning like a bomb. Riley was walking Sky to school when she saw them at every newsstand, every grocery store, every corner in Seattle. Billionaire's secret love nest, single mom seduces mute mogul. Her legs gave out right there on the sidewalk. The photos were everywhere. Riley leaving Grant's penthouse at dawn, hair messy, wearing yesterday's clothes. Grant in his robe, watching from the window. Sky in pajamas, waving goodbye. The captions made her sick. Gold digger Riley Monroe has been living in luxury while her boyfriend fights for his company. Is this the woman controlling Seattle's richest man? Sources say Monroe seduced Holloway while he was vulnerable, then moved into his $1 million penthouse. "Mama?" Sky tugged on Riley's jacket. "Why are you crying?" Riley wiped her eyes quickly, but more people were staring. Pointing. Whispering. "Come on, baby," Riley said, pulling Sky away. "Let's go home." But it was too late. By the time they got back to Grant's building, reporters were camped outside. Cameras flashed as Riley tried to shield Sky's face. "Ms. Monroe. How long have you been living with Grant Holloway? Is it true you're after his money? Are you planning to marry him?" Riley pushed through the crowd, security guards helping clear a path. But the damage was done. Upstairs, Grant was pacing like a caged animal. Newspapers spread across every surface, each one worse than the last. "I'm so sorry," Riley said the moment they walked in. "I should have been more careful this morning." "This isn't your fault," Grant said firmly. "This is Derek. Even from jail, he's found a way to hurt us." "How do you know?" Grant showed her his phone. A text from an unknown number, "Enjoying the headlines?" "This is just the beginning. D. He's orchestrating this from prison," Grant said, his voice tight with rage. "Using contacts, paying people to follow us." Riley sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. "The school parents are going to see this. Sky's teachers. Everyone. So what?" Grant knelt in front of her. "Let them see. We have nothing to hide. Don't we?" Riley looked up with tears in her eyes. "Grant, look at these headlines. They're calling me a gold digger. A seductress. They're saying I'm using you. Nobody who matters believes that. Everyone believes it." Riley stood up, pacing. "Look at these photos. I look like some woman sneaking out after a one-night stand." Grant caught her hands, stopping her movement. "Riley, look at me." She did, seeing the pain in his eyes. "Do you care what they say?" he asked quietly. "Yes. I care because it affects Sky. Because it affects you. Because," her voice broke. "Because maybe they're right." Grant went perfectly still. "What?" "Maybe I am using you," Riley whispered. "Maybe I am a gold digger who saw a lonely rich man and took advantage. You don't believe that. Don't I?" Riley pulled away. 3 months ago, I was working double shifts to pay rent on a one-bedroom apartment. Now I'm living in a penthouse, my daughter has everything she could want, and I have a 6-figure job I'm not qualified for. You earned that job. Did I? Or did I earn it on my back? The words hit Grant like a physical blow. "Riley, don't. Don't what? Don't face reality." Riley was crying now. Look at us, Grant. Really look. You're a billionaire. I'm a single mom who didn't graduate college. You could have anyone, and I have nothing to offer except. Stop. Grant's voice cut through her words like ice. Stop right there. He walked to his desk and pulled out a folder. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, contracts. You want to know what you've given me? Grant said, his voice shaking. You've given me everything. He spread the documents across the coffee table. This is my will. Before I met you, everything I owned was going to charity when I died. Do you know why? Because I had no one. No family. No reason to leave a legacy. Riley stared at the papers. After I met you, I changed it. Everything, the company, the foundation, the penthouse, it all goes to sky if something happens to me. Grant. Riley's voice was barely a whisper. And this, Grant pulled out another document, is a trust fund. $5 million, already in Sky's name. For college, for her future. It's hers regardless of what happens between us. Riley's legs gave out. She sank back onto the couch. And this, Grant continued, holding up a final paper, is a deed. The house in Queen Anne. The one we looked at last week. I bought it. It's in your name. Yours and Sky's. No matter what happens, you'll always have a home. Riley couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. So please, Grant said, his voice breaking, don't tell me you have nothing to offer. You gave me a reason to live. You gave me a family. You gave me love. He knelt in front of her again. I don't care what the newspapers say. I don't care what people think. I care about you. I care about Sky. I care about the family we've built. Riley's phone buzzed. A text from Sky's school, Ms. Monroe, perhaps Sky should stay home today. The media attention is disruptive. They don't want Sky at school, Riley said, showing Grant the message. Grant read it, his jaw tightening. Then we'll find her a new school. You can't solve everything with money, Grant. I can solve this. Grant stood up, his decision made. We're going public. All the way public. What do you mean? Grant was already reaching for his phone. I mean we stop hiding. Stop running. Stop letting other people tell our story. He dialed a number. Ben. I need you to set up interviews. Every major network, every newspaper that matters. I want to tell our story the right way. Riley grabbed his arm. Grant, no. The attention will be on our terms, Grant said firmly. We'll control the narrative. We'll show the world who we really are. He covered the phone. Riley, do you trust me? She looked at him, this man who'd given her everything, asked for nothing, and loved her daughter like his own. Yes, she whispered. I trust you. Grant smiled and returned to his call. Ben. Schedule them all. And make sure they know, this isn't just an interview. It's a love story. But as Grant made arrangements to go public, neither he nor Riley noticed the figure across the street, photographing them through the penthouse windows. Someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Someone who knew that the biggest headlines were yet to come. Because when you declare war on the media, you better be ready for them to fight back. It happened at sunset on Wednesday. Riley, Grant, and Sky were at the Seattle waterfront, trying to have a normal family evening despite the media chaos. They'd taken the ferry to Bainbridge Island for dinner, hoping to escape the reporters. Look, Mr. Grant. Sky pointed excitedly at the seagulls diving for fish. They're like flying paper cranes. Grant smiled, his arm around Riley's shoulders. For a moment, it felt like the eye of the storm, peaceful, safe, normal. They were wrong. As they walked back toward the ferry terminal, Riley noticed a man in a baseball cap following them. At first, she thought it was just another tourist. But when they turned left, he turned left. When they stopped, he stopped too. "Grant," she whispered, "we're being followed." Grant glanced back casually. "I see him. Torres has a team here. We're safe." But as they approached the ferry dock, Riley realized they weren't as safe as Grant thought. The man in the baseball cap wasn't alone. Two more men emerged from the crowd ahead. Another stepped out from behind a hot dog stand. All of them moving with purpose, closing in like a trap. "Grant," Riley's voice was tight with fear. "There are more of them." Grant's hand immediately went to his phone, speed dialing Torres. But before he could hit send, a van screeched to a stop beside them. The side door flew open. "Sky." A voice she'd hoped never to hear again cut through the evening air. Derek Lowe jumped out of the van, no longer in handcuffs, no longer in prison clothes. He wore an expensive suit and a smile that promised violence. "Hello, Princess," he said, reaching for Sky. "Daddy's here to take you home." Everything happened in seconds. Riley screamed and pulled Sky behind her. Grant stepped protectively in front of both of them, his phone finally connecting. "Torres. Now!" Grant shouted. But Derek wasn't alone. The four men who'd been following them rushed forward, forming a circle around Grant's family. "How did you get out?" Grant demanded. "Money talks, rich boy," Derek laughed. Amazing how cooperative judges can be when the right pressure is applied. One of Derek's men grabbed Riley's arm. Another reached for Sky. That's when Sky did exactly what Grant had taught her. She dropped her red paper crane. The small bird fluttered to the concrete, bright red against the gray dock. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then chaos erupted. Torres and 3 security agents burst from the crowd. But Derek had expected this. "Now," he shouted. Smoke grenades exploded around them, filling the air with thick, choking gray clouds. Riley couldn't see 3 feet in any direction. In the confusion, hands grabbed at her. At Sky. "Mama!" Sky screamed, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I've got her!" Riley yelled back, but she couldn't tell if Grant heard through the smoke and shouting. Riley felt Sky being pulled away. She grabbed desperately, her fingers finding her daughter's jacket. "Let her go!" Riley screamed, fighting the hands that held her. Through the smoke, she heard Grant's voice roaring with pure rage, "Nobody touches my family." The sound of fists hitting flesh. Grunts of pain. Someone cursing. Then Riley felt herself being dragged toward the van. "Grant," she screamed. "I'm coming." His voice was closer now, fighting through the melee. Riley kicked at the man holding her, her heel connecting with his shin. He cursed and loosened his grip just enough for her to break free. But Sky was still being dragged toward the van. "No." Riley lunged forward, grabbing Sky's arm just as Derek tried to lift her into the vehicle. "She's my daughter." Derek snarled. "She's my daughter." Riley shot back, pulling Sky against her chest. For a moment, they played tug-of-war with an 8-year-old girl while smoke swirled and chaos reigned. That's when Grant appeared through the gray fog like something out of a nightmare. His face was bloody from fighting. His expensive shirt was torn. But his eyes were absolutely terrifying in their focus. He walked straight up to Derek and spoke in a voice that could have frozen fire. "Let her go. Or what?" Derek sneered, still holding Sky's other arm. Grant's answer was simple. He pulled out his phone and showed Derek the screen. It was a live video feed showing Derek's mother's house. An old woman sitting on her porch, reading a book, completely unaware she was being watched. "Your mother looks comfortable," Grant said quietly. It would be a shame if something happened to that nice house. Derek went pale. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? Grant's smile was colder than winter. You threatened my family. Now I'm threatening yours. Grant, Riley whispered, don't become him. Grant looked at her, and for a moment his expression softened. I won't. But he doesn't know that. Derek's grip on Sky loosened slightly. You're bluffing. Am I? Grant showed him another screen. Bank accounts. Property records. I know where she shops. Where she gets her hair done. Which church she attends. I know her daily routine better than you do. How did you? Money talks, remember? You taught me that. The smoke was beginning to clear. Torres and his men had subdued most of Derek's accomplices. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Derek looked around desperately, realizing his plan was falling apart. This isn't over, he snarled. Yes, it is, Grant said firmly. Because I'm giving you one chance. Right now. Let go of Sky, get in your van, and disappear. And if I don't? Grant's voice dropped to a whisper. Then I stop playing nice. For a long moment, Derek stared into Grant's eyes. Whatever he saw there made his decision. He released Sky. This isn't over, Holloway, he said, backing toward the van. If I see you near my family again, Grant replied, it will be. The van doors slammed shut. Tires squealed. Within seconds, Derek and his remaining men were gone. Riley collapsed to her knees, pulling Sky into her arms. Oh God, baby, are you okay? I'm okay, Mama, Sky said, but she was shaking. Mr. Grant scared the bad man away. Grant knelt beside them, checking them both for injuries. Are you hurt? Either of you? We're okay, Riley said, tears streaming. Grant, how did you? The video of his mother. Wasn't real, Grant said quietly. I would never hurt an innocent person. But Derek didn't know that. Riley stared at him. You bluffed. With our lives. I protected my family, Grant corrected. Whatever it took. Torres ran up, breathing hard. Sir, are you all right? We got most of them, but the van. Let them go, Grant said. For now. As they walked back toward the ferry, Sky tugged on Grant's jacket. Mr. Grant? Yes, sweetheart. I knew you'd come, she said simply. I wasn't scared because I knew you'd save us. Grant's throat tightened. How did you know? Sky smiled up at him with perfect 8-year-old logic. Because that's what daddies do. The word hit Grant like lightning. Daddy. For the first time, Sky had called him Daddy. And in that moment, walking through the fading sunset toward home, Grant realized something that changed everything. He wasn't just protecting Riley and Sky because he loved them. He was protecting them because they were his family. Really, truly his. And he would burn down the world before he let anyone take them away. That night, Grant couldn't sleep. He stood at his penthouse window, staring out at Seattle's glittering skyline. The attempted kidnapping had shaken him more than he'd let Riley see. Not because of the danger, but because of how close he'd come to losing everything that mattered. Riley and Sky were asleep in the guest room, safe behind reinforced doors. Torres had stationed guards everywhere. The building was more secure than Fort Knox. But security wasn't enough anymore. Grant walked quietly through his penthouse, past rooms filled with expensive art and furniture that suddenly felt meaningless. He stopped at a door he'd kept locked for 3 years. His private study. The room where he'd hidden from the world after his accident. Tonight, it was time to stop hiding. Grant unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was exactly as he'd left it, dark, dusty, filled with abandoned dreams. A piano sat silent in one corner. Easels held half-finished paintings. A workbench covered in tools from the carpentry hobby that had helped him through depression. But tonight, Grant wasn't seeing what was there. He was seeing what could be. Grant pulled out his phone and started making calls. Carlos? It's Grant Holloway. I need contractors. Tonight. I don't care what it costs. An hour later, Grant's penthouse was full of workers. Carpenters, painters, electricians, all working through the night to transform his forgotten study. I want it perfect, Grant told the lead contractor. Every detail matters. By sunrise, it was done. Grant stood in the doorway, exhausted but satisfied. The room had been completely transformed. Where there had been darkness, now there was light. Soft, warm light that made everything glow. The walls were painted cream and soft yellow, like morning sunshine. The old piano had been restored and tuned. New sheet music sat on the bench, simple songs for small hands. Beside it sat a beautiful wooden stool, hand-carved with flowers and birds. One wall held easels and art supplies. Real artist-quality paints, brushes, canvases stretched and ready. A rainbow of colored pencils in glass jars that sparkled. But the centerpiece was a reading nook by the window. A window seat with soft cushions overlooking Elliott Bay. Shelves lined with children's stories and adventure novels. And on the windowsill, 5 preserved paper cranes caught the morning light. Grant had saved the most important detail for last. Above the reading nook, carved into the wooden beam in elegant letters, room for 2. Mr. Grant. A sleepy voice made him turn. Skye stood in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. She wore princess pajamas and carried her stuffed rabbit. What are you doing up so early, sweetheart? I heard noises. Like hammers. Skye yawned. Were people building something? Grant knelt down. Would you like to see? Skye nodded, suddenly wide awake. Grant took her small hand and led her to the open door. This used to be my sad room. Where I went when I felt alone. But I don't need a sad room anymore. Skye gasped as she saw the transformed space. It's beautiful. It looks like a princess room. It's your room, Grant said softly. Yours and your mama's. A place where you can play music and paint pictures and read stories. Skye ran to the piano, her fingers dancing lightly over the keys. The sound was pure and sweet. It sounds happy, she said, looking back with shining eyes. Because it is happy now. Because you're here. Skye. Riley's voice came from down the hall. Baby, where are you? Mama. Come see. Mr. Grant made us a magic room. Riley appeared in the doorway, hair messy from sleep, wearing one of Grant's t-shirts. She looked beautiful and rumpled and perfect. When she saw the room, her hand flew to her mouth. Grant, she breathed. What did you do? I made space for you, Grant said simply. Real space. Permanent space. Riley walked slowly into the room, touching everything with gentle fingers. The art supplies, the piano bench, the soft cushions. Her eyes filled with tears as she read the words carved above the window seat. Room for 2, she whispered. You and Skye, Grant said. This is your sanctuary. No matter what happens, this room belongs to you. Riley turned to face him, tears streaming. Grant, this is. I can't. You can't what? You can't accept that someone loves you enough to build you a room? Grant stepped closer. You don't have to earn love, Riley. You just have to accept it. Skye was exploring, discovering treasures. A music box shaped like a crane. A box of art supplies with her name carved in the lid. Books about brave girls and magical adventures. Mama, Skye said, running back. This is the most beautiful room in the whole world. Can we live here forever? Riley looked at Grant, seeing something in his eyes that made her heart stop. "Forever is a long time, sweetheart," she said carefully. "Not long enough," Grant said quietly. Riley's breath caught. "Grant." He knelt down so he was eye level with both of them. "Riley, Sky," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Yesterday, when Derek tried to take you away, I realized something. I can't live without you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and velvet. Riley's heart stopped. "This isn't just about having a room in my house," Grant continued. "This is about having a life together. A real family. Forever." He opened the small box. Inside was a ring. Not huge or flashy, but perfect. A simple band with a stone that caught the morning light. "Riley Monroe," Grant said, his voice strong and sure. "Will you marry me?" Riley stared at the ring, then at Grant, then at Sky, who was bouncing with excitement. "Say yes, Mama." Sky whispered loudly. "Say yes so Mr. Grant can be my real daddy." Real daddy. The words finally spoken out loud. Riley looked around the beautiful room Grant had built. At the love carved into every detail. At the man who transformed his saddest space into their happiest one. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, "Yes." Grant's face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. He slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood up and pulled both her and Sky into his arms. They stood there in their new room, holding each other as morning light streamed through the windows and painted everything golden. "We're going to be a real family," Sky said happily. "We already are," Grant said, his voice thick with joy. "We already are." "I'm not crying, you're crying." Loudly crying face. If this proposal just melted your heart, let me know in the comments. Are you team small wedding or team fairy tale wedding for these three? And please subscribe because we're building the most beautiful community of people who believe in real love stories. Trust me, you'll want to be here for what comes next. But as they celebrated in their perfect room, none of them saw the figure watching from the building across the street. Someone with high-powered binoculars and a telephoto lens. Someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Someone who was about to make sure their happiness was very, very short-lived. That evening, after Sky was tucked safely in bed, Riley stood alone in their new room. She touched the engagement ring on her finger, still barely believing it was real. The stone caught the lamplight, throwing tiny rainbows across the wall. Having second thoughts. Grant's voice came from the doorway. Riley turned, her heart skipping. He'd changed into jeans and a soft sweater. His hair was slightly messy, and there was something vulnerable in his eyes. "No," she said softly. "Just, overwhelmed." Grant stepped into the room but kept his distance. "Good overwhelmed or bad overwhelmed?" Riley smiled. "Good. Definitely good." They'd been living together for weeks, but always as friends. Always careful. Always with Sky between them, creating a buffer. But tonight felt different. Tonight, they were engaged. "Grant," Riley said quietly. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why didn't you ever?" "I mean, we've been sharing your home for so long, but you never tried to." She blushed, unable to finish. Grant understood immediately. "Because I wanted you to choose me, not need me. There's a difference." He moved closer, just one step. "After my accident, women either pitied me or saw me as a challenge to fix. I didn't want you to feel obligated. I wanted you to want me because of who I am, not what I could give you. And now." Riley's voice was barely a whisper. "Now I know the difference," Grant said. "The way you look at me isn't pity. It's love," Riley finished. "Love," he agreed. The word hung in the air between them like a bridge neither had dared cross before. Riley took a step toward him. Then another. "I've been thinking about this for weeks," she admitted. "About you. About us. But I was scared." "Of what?" "Of ruining it. Of not being enough. Of not knowing how to be with someone like you." Grant's expression grew tender. "Someone like me?" "Someone good," Riley said simply. "Someone who deserves better than damaged goods." Grant closed the remaining distance in 2 quick steps. His hands came up to frame her face, gentle but sure. "Riley Monroe," he said firmly. "You are not damaged goods. You are the strongest, most beautiful, most incredible woman I've ever known." Riley's eyes filled with tears. "Grant. You survived abuse. You raised an amazing daughter on your own. You worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. You protected Sky from everything ugly while keeping your own heart open enough to save a lonely billionaire." His thumbs brushed away her tears. "If anyone isn't enough in this relationship, it's me." "That's not true," Riley protested. "Isn't it?" Grant's smile was sad. "You fell in love with a man who couldn't even speak. Who spent 3 years hiding from the world." "I fell in love with a man who listened when I needed to be heard," Riley corrected. "Who protected my daughter like she was his own. Who saw past our circumstances to who we really were." She reached up to touch his face, mirroring his gesture. "I fell in love with you, Grant. All of you. The silence and the voice. The fear and the courage. The loneliness and the love." For a moment, they just stood there, faces inches apart, breathing the same air. "Riley," Grant whispered. "Yes. May I kiss you?" The question was so formal, so careful, so perfectly him that Riley almost laughed. Instead, she rose up on her tiptoes and kissed him first. It was soft. Tentative. A question asked with lips instead of words. Grant answered by pulling her closer, his arms wrapping around her waist as he kissed her back. Deeper now, sure now, 3 months of careful distance dissolving in a single perfect moment. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I've wanted to do that since the first night you stayed here," Grant confessed. "The first night?" Riley was surprised. "But I was such a mess. Crying, scared." "You were brave," Grant corrected. "You chose to trust me with the most precious thing in your world. How could I not fall in love with that?" Riley felt her cheeks burn. "I'm still scared, you know." "Of what?" "Of this. Of us. Of how much I love you." Grant's arms tightened around her. "Why does loving me scare you?" "Because I've never loved anyone like this before," Riley admitted. "Even with Derek, it wasn't. This feels like if I lost you, I'd lose myself too." Grant was quiet for a long moment, his hand stroking her hair. "When I lost my voice," he said finally, "I thought I'd lost everything. But I was wrong. I'd only lost my old life. The new one was waiting for me in booth 7. He tilted her chin up to meet his eyes. "Loving you doesn't make you vulnerable, Riley. It makes you stronger. Because now you have someone who will fight beside you." "Promise?" she whispered. "Promise." Riley kissed him again, and this time there was no hesitation. This time it was a claiming, a declaration, a promise of their own. Grant lifted her off her feet, spinning her slowly in the soft light. When he set her down, they were both laughing. "I love you," Riley said, the words coming easily now. "I love you too," Grant replied. "More than I ever thought possible." They sat together on the window seat, Riley curled against Grant's side, watching the city lights twinkle below. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her arm while she played with the ring on her finger. "Grant? When do you want to have the wedding?" Grant's hand stilled. "Whenever you want. Tomorrow, next month, next year." Riley was quiet, thinking. "Soon," she said finally. I want it to be soon. Why? She looked up at him, her eyes serious. Because I've spent too many years being afraid of happiness. I don't want to waste any more time. Grant's smile was brilliant. Then soon it is. They sat in comfortable silence, wrapped in each other and their shared future. Outside, Seattle hummed with life, but inside their room, there was only peace. Only love. Only the quiet certainty that they'd found what they were both looking for. But if they'd looked out the window at that moment, they would have seen something that would have shattered their peace instantly. A black car parked across the street. Windows tinted so dark they looked like mirrors. Inside sat someone who'd been watching their every move. Someone who'd photographed their first kiss, their engagement, their happiness. Someone who was about to use that happiness against them in the cruelest way possible. Because the real enemy wasn't Derek Lowe. The real enemy was someone much closer to home. And tomorrow, everything would change. The nightmare came at 3 a.m. Grant woke to Riley screaming in her sleep, her body thrashing against invisible attackers. She was in the guest bed, where she'd insisted on sleeping despite their engagement, old fears dying hard. No, please. Riley cried out, her voice broken with terror. Don't hurt Sky. Take me instead. Grant was beside her in seconds, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Riley, wake up. You're safe. Riley. Her eyes flew open, wild with panic. For a moment, she didn't recognize him. Get away from me, she gasped, scrambling backward until she hit the headboard. It's me, Grant said softly, holding his hands up. It's Grant. You're safe. Reality slowly returned to Riley's eyes. She looked around the beautiful bedroom, saw the morning light, remembered where she was. Oh God, she whispered, covering her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize, Grant said, sitting carefully on the bed edge. Bad dream? Riley nodded, tears sliding between her fingers. It's always the same. Derek takes Sky, and I can't stop him. I'm too weak, too small, too nothing. Grant's heart broke. Riley, look at me. She lowered her hands reluctantly. You are not nothing. You are everything. And Derek will never touch Sky again. How can you be so sure? Grant pulled out his phone and showed her a news alert. Derek Lowe arrested in Mexico, facing federal kidnapping charges. Riley's eyes went wide. How did you? I have people watching him. The moment he crossed the border trying to flee, federal agents were waiting. He's looking at 25 to life this time. Riley stared at the screen. It's really over. It's really over, Grant confirmed. But Riley was still shaking. Grant, what if I can't get past this? What if the nightmares never stop? What if I'm too broken to be the wife you deserve? Grant moved closer. Can I tell you something? She nodded. I have nightmares too. Riley looked surprised. You do? Every night for the first year after my accident. I'd dream I was trapped in the car, screaming for help, but no sound would come out. Grant's voice was quiet but steady. The doctors said it was trauma. That my mind was processing the loss by replaying it. How did you make them stop? I didn't. Not at first. Grant looked out at the skyline. I tried everything. Therapy, medication, sleeping pills. Nothing worked. What changed? Grant looked back at her. You did. And Sky. Riley's breath caught. The first night after I met you both, I slept through the night. No nightmares. No panic. Just peace. Why? Because I finally had something worth waking up for, Grant said simply. Something worth protecting. Something worth healing for. Riley was quiet, processing his words. I'm scared, Grant, she admitted. Not just of Derek. Of everything. Of being happy. Of trusting that this is real. Why does happiness scare you? Because every time I've been happy before, someone took it away. Riley's voice cracked. My parents died when I was 16. I thought I was happy with Derek until he showed me who he really was. She looked at Grant with desperate honesty. What if I'm cursed? What if everyone I love gets hurt or leaves? Grant reached for her hands, holding them gently. Riley, look at me. Really look. She did, seeing absolute certainty in his eyes. I'm not going anywhere. Not ever. Do you know why? She shook her head. Because you and Sky saved my life. Before you, I was dying slowly. Not from my injuries, but from loneliness. From purposelessness. Grant's grip tightened. You gave me a reason to find my voice again. You gave me a family worth protecting. You gave me love I thought I'd never deserve. Grant. So no, I'm not leaving. I'm not dying. I'm not going to betray you or hurt you or abandon you. Because losing you would be losing everything that makes life worth living. Riley started crying, not from fear this time, but from relief. I love you, she whispered. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good, Grant said, pulling her into his arms. Because I love you so much I'd rewrite reality if that's what it took to keep you safe. They held each other as the sun rose over Seattle, two broken people choosing to heal together. Grant? Riley said against his chest. Yeah. Tell me about Lydia. About how she hurt you. Grant was quiet for so long Riley thought he wouldn't answer. She made me feel like my disability was something to be ashamed of, he finally said. Like I was less of a man because I couldn't speak. She'd finish my sentences, answer for me, make excuses for my silence. That must have been awful. The worst part wasn't what she did in public. It was what she said in private. Grant's voice was barely audible. She told me I should be grateful that someone like her would be with someone like me. That my money was the only reason anyone would want to be around me. Riley pulled back to look at him. Grant, that's horrible. For 8 months, I believed her. I thought she was doing me a favor by staying. When I found out about the cheating, part of me wasn't even surprised. Part of me thought I deserved it. You didn't deserve any of that. I know that now, Grant said. Because of you. Because you look at me like I'm enough. Like I'm more than enough. Riley cupped his face in her hands. You're everything, Grant. With or without your voice. Rich or poor. Perfect or flawed. You're everything. Grant leaned into her touch. How do you do that? Do what? Make me believe I'm worth loving. The same way you make me believe I'm not broken, Riley said. With patience. With kindness. With the kind of love that doesn't keep score. They kissed then, soft and slow and healing. Not passion this time, but comfort. Not desire, but acceptance. When they broke apart, Grant rested his forehead against hers. We're going to be okay, aren't we? Better than okay, Riley promised. We're going to be happy. Really, truly happy. Even with all our damage. Riley smiled. Especially with our damage. Because our scars match, Grant. They fit together like puzzle pieces. From down the hall came the sound of little feet running. Mama. Mr. Grant. Sky's voice called out. I had the best dream. I dreamed we were all birds flying together. Riley and Grant looked at each other and started laughing. Flying together, Grant repeated. I like that. Me too, Riley said. As Sky burst into the room with her bright smile and morning energy, Riley realized something profound. Her nightmares were about losing everything. But her reality was about gaining everything. And for the first time in her adult life, reality was so much better than her dreams. But what Riley didn't know was that while she was healing from old betrayals, a new betrayal was being planned. Someone who'd been watching their happiness with growing rage was about to make their final move. Friday morning changed everything. Riley was making pancakes in Grant's kitchen, humming softly while Sky sat at the counter folding paper cranes. It was domestic bliss, the kind of peaceful moment that made all their struggles worth it. Grant walked in from his morning conference call, his face troubled. "Everything okay?" Riley asked, noticing his expression. Grant hesitated. "Ben just got some concerning news. There's been talk at the board level. Someone's been asking questions about our engagement, about the foundation, about my fitness to lead. I thought all that was settled after the technology demo." "So did I." Grant pulled out a chair next to Sky. "But apparently someone's been spreading rumors. Suggesting that my relationship with you is affecting my judgment." Riley's heart sank. "They want to get rid of me." "They want to get rid of us," Grant corrected. "Someone thinks making me choose between the company and my family will break me." Sky looked up from her crane folding. "Mr. Grant, are you in trouble because of us?" Grant's expression softened immediately. "No, sweetheart. I could never be in trouble because of you. You and your mama are the best things that ever happened to me. But what if they make you pick?" Sky asked with 8-year-old wisdom. Grant knelt beside her chair. "Then I pick you. Every time. Without hesitation." "But your company is important too," Sky said seriously. "Not as important as family." Riley felt tears prick her eyes. 3 months ago, she would have packed their bags rather than let Grant sacrifice his business. But now she understood. Love wasn't about sacrifice. It was about choosing what mattered most. Before Grant could continue, the penthouse intercom buzzed. "Mr. Holloway. You have visitors. Margaret Winters and 3 other board members. They say it's urgent." Riley's stomach dropped. If Margaret was here with others. "Send them up," Grant said grimly. 10 minutes later, 4 powerful people sat in Grant's living room. Margaret looked uncomfortable. The others looked determined. "Grant," Margaret began carefully, "we need to discuss some concerns." "What kind of concerns?" Robert Nash leaned forward. "Concerns about your personal life affecting your professional judgment." "Be specific," Grant said, his voice dangerously calm. "This foundation you're starting," Patricia Stone said. "Giving away millions for a feel-good project that won't generate revenue. The licensing deals more than cover the foundation costs," Grant replied. "That's not the point," Robert continued. "The point is you're making emotional decisions. And the emotion driving those decisions is..." He gestured toward Riley and Sky. Riley felt like she'd been slapped. "You think we're bad for him. We think you're a distraction," Robert said bluntly. Grant stood up slowly. "Careful, Robert." "Grant, be reasonable," Patricia said. "You've changed since they came into your life. You take risks now. You make grand gestures. You've become unpredictable." "I've become human," Grant corrected. "You've become reckless," Robert shot back. "The kidnapping attempt, the media circus. This isn't the Grant Holloway who built this company." "You're right," Grant said quietly. "It's not." Riley's heart stopped. The Grant Holloway who built this company was broken. Isolated. Dying slowly. Grant walked to the window. That Grant made money, but he didn't make a difference. He was successful, but he wasn't happy. He turned back to face them. "This Grant. The one you're so concerned about, this Grant has a reason to get up in the morning. This Grant builds technology that helps people. This Grant creates foundations that change the world. This Grant has a family worth fighting for." Margaret looked uncomfortable. Grant, we're not saying you have to choose. Yes, you are, Grant interrupted. That's exactly what you're saying. Robert Nash stood up. What we're saying is Holloway Capital needs a CEO who puts the company first. Always. Then you need a new CEO, Grant said simply. The room went dead silent. Riley gasped. Sky's eyes went wide. Grant, Margaret said desperately, don't do this. Grant looked at Riley, then at Sky, then back at the board members. For 3 years, he'd struggled to find his voice. Now, finally, he knew exactly what he needed to say. Grant walked over to Riley and Sky, placing a protective hand on each of their shoulders. I need to tell you something, he said. Something I should have said a long time ago. He took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his voice was stronger and clearer than it had ever been since his accident. I love them, he said, each word crystal clear. I love Riley Monroe with every breath in my body. I love Sky like she's my own daughter. They are my family, my heart, my reason for existing. The board members stared in shock. Grant's voice was perfect. No roughness, no hesitation. For 3 years, you've had a CEO who was half alive, Grant continued. Now you have a CEO who's fully human. Who makes decisions based on love and hope and the belief that business should make the world better, not just richer. He squeezed Riley's shoulder gently. If you can't accept that, then I'll step down tomorrow. I'll sell my shares, dissolve my connection, and start over. But I will not, I will never, choose money over family. Robert Nash looked furious. You can't be serious. Watch me, Grant said firmly. Then he knelt down to Sky's level. Sky, sweetheart, can you do something for me? She nodded, eyes wide. Can you tell these people what the most important thing in the world is? Sky looked at the serious business people, then back at Grant with perfect confidence. Family, she said clearly. The most important thing is family. Grant smiled and stood up, facing the board members. There's your answer. From someone who understands what really matters. Margaret looked around at her colleagues. Grant, you're making a mistake. No, Grant said. For the first time in my life, I'm making the right choice. Robert Nash headed toward the door. Fine. We'll call an emergency meeting for Monday morning. I will, Grant said confidently. As the board members left, Margaret lingered. Grant, I hope you know what you're doing. Grant looked at Riley and Sky, both watching him with absolute trust and love. I do, he said simply. For the first time in my life, I know exactly what I'm doing. After the door closed, Sky ran to Grant and hugged his legs. Mr. Grant, you talked perfectly. Your voice is all better. Grant knelt down and pulled her into a hug. You know what made it better? What? Love, Grant said simply. Love makes everything better. Riley joined their hug, the three of them holding each other in the middle of the living room. I can't believe you just did that, Riley whispered. Did what? Chose us over everything else. Grant pulled back to look at her. Riley, there was no choice. It's always been you. Both of you. But what if you lose the company? Then we'll build something better together, Grant said without hesitation. Stop everything. Grant just chose love over billions of dollars. Comment, choose love, if you're proud of this man right now. This is why I love sharing these stories with you amazing people, because love should always win. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We're about to find out if Grant's choice was worth it, and you deserve to be here for the finale. But as they celebrated Grant's complete vocal recovery and his absolute commitment, none of them realized someone had been listening. Someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Because in exactly 1 hour, Grant was about to discover that his biggest betrayal wasn't from Lydia or Derek. It was from someone he trusted with his life. 1 hour after the board left, the real betrayal revealed itself. Grant was in his office making calls when Ben Harlow walked in with a face like death. "Grant, we have a problem. A big one." Grant looked up from his computer. "What now?" Ben placed a tablet on the desk. The screen showed a video call with a man Grant had never seen before, middle-aged, expensive suit, cold eyes. "Mr. Holloway," the man said through the speakers. "My name is Marcus Chen." Grant went ice cold. Marcus Chen. His former COO. The man who'd been sleeping with Lydia. "What do you want, Marcus?" "What I've always wanted. Your company. Your life. Your downfall." Riley appeared in the doorway, drawn by the tension. She saw the screen and immediately sensed danger. "You see, Grant," Marcus continued, "Lydia and I have been planning this for over a year. The magazine article was just the beginning. Getting Derek out to terrorize your precious family. That was my idea too." Grant's hands clenched into fists. "You son of a..." But the real masterstroke, Marcus interrupted, was getting someone close to you. Someone you trusted completely. The video screen split. On one side, Marcus smiled coldly. On the other side, Ben Harlow appeared, but not the Ben in Grant's office. This Ben was in a hotel room, counting stacks of cash. "Hello, Grant," Ben said on screen. Surprise. Grant spun around to look at the real Ben standing in his office. "What the hell is going on?" "I'm sorry, Grant," Ben said quietly. "I never wanted it to go this far." Riley gasped. "Ben. You've been working for them?" "For 2 years," Ben admitted, his voice breaking. "Ever since my daughter needed cancer treatment and insurance wouldn't cover it. Marcus offered me $5 million to be his inside man." Grant stared at his closest advisor, his most trusted friend. "Everything? The board meetings? The business deals? The foundation?" "Everything," Ben whispered. "I've been feeding Marcus information about every move you made." On the screen, Marcus laughed. "Did you really think those technology deals happened by accident? I've been orchestrating every step, Grant. Setting you up for the biggest fall in business history." "What do you want?" Grant demanded. "I want you to lose everything. Your company, your reputation, your family's safety." The video screen changed. This time it showed live footage of Sky's new school. Riley screamed. But Grant was already moving, grabbing his phone. "Torres, get to Sky's school. Now." Marcus's voice was casual. "Relax. She's perfectly safe. For now. But that could change if you don't do exactly what I say." "What do you want?" Grant's voice was ice. "Come to booth 7 at North and Pine. Alone. You have 30 minutes. The screen went black. Grant was already moving, grabbing his jacket. Riley caught his arm. "Grant, no. It's a trap. They have information about Sky's location," Grant said grimly. "I can't take that chance. I'm coming with you." "No." Grant cupped her face. "Riley, listen. If something happens to me, everything goes to you and Sky. The will, the accounts, everything. You'll be safe. I don't care about money." Riley was crying. "I care about you." Grant kissed her quickly. "Call Torres. Tell him what's happening. But don't let him interfere until I have confirmation Sky is safe." 25 minutes later, Grant walked into North and Pine. The restaurant was empty except for one figure sitting in booth 7. But it wasn't Marcus Chen. It was Derek Lowe. "Surprise, rich boy," Derek said, his smile sharp. "Did you really think I was in Mexico?" Grant's mind raced. "How?" "Marcus Chen is a very resourceful man. And very, very angry at you for destroying his career. Grant sat down slowly, his phone hidden in his palm, already recording. Here's the deal, Derek said. You're going to transfer ownership of Holloway Capital to Marcus. You're going to dissolve your foundation. And you're going to publicly admit you're mentally unfit. And if I don't, then Sky disappears. Forever. Grant pulled out his phone and showed Derek the screen. It was a live stream showing dozens of police cars surrounding a warehouse across town. You think I came here unprepared? Grant said calmly. You think I didn't have Torres track every electronic signal? The moment I walked in here, my security team moved in. Right now, they're rescuing people at the warehouse you were using as your base. Grant's phone buzzed. A text from Torres, package secured. All targets safe. Grant smiled. That would be confirmation that everyone is safe. Including proof that Marcus Chen was behind this entire operation. Derek lunged across the table, but Grant was ready. He grabbed Derek's wrist and twisted. You made one mistake, Derek. You thought I was the same broken man from 3 months ago. But that man is gone. The restaurant doors burst open. Torres and 6 federal agents surrounded the table. Derek Lowe, Torres announced, you're under arrest for conspiracy, kidnapping, and about a dozen other charges. As they dragged Derek away, he screamed, this isn't over. Yes, Grant said quietly. It is. 2 weeks later, everything had changed. Marcus Chen was facing federal charges. Derek was in maximum security with no possibility of bail. Ben was testifying in exchange for a reduced sentence. The board had unanimously voted to keep Grant as CEO after the full story came out. But none of that mattered as much as this moment. Grant sat in booth 7, but he wasn't alone. Riley was beside him, her engagement ring catching the soft light. Across from them, Sky was arranging paper cranes on the table, one for each week they'd been a family. 23 cranes, Sky announced proudly. That's how many weeks since I met you, Mr. Grant. Actually, Grant said with a smile, tonight makes 24. Then I need another crane. Sky immediately started folding. Riley leaned against Grant's shoulder. Can you believe it's only been 6 months? Feels like a lifetime, Grant said. The good kind. They sat in their booth, no longer running, no longer hiding, no longer looking over their shoulders. Mr. Grant? Sky asked, adding her 24th crane to the collection. Yes, sweetheart. When you marry Mama next month, can we have the party here? Grant and Riley exchanged glances. They'd been planning a small courthouse ceremony. Here? Grant asked. In the restaurant? Right here at our booth, Sky said seriously. This is where you fell in love. This is where we became a family. Riley's eyes filled with happy tears. You know what? I think that's perfect. Really? Sky bounced. Can we invite everyone? Can we have cake? You can wear whatever makes you happy, Grant said. Sky grinned. This is going to be the best wedding ever. As they sat there planning their future, Grant realized something profound. A year ago, he'd been a man defined by absence. Absent voice, absent purpose, absent love. Now he was defined by presence. The presence of Riley's laughter. The presence of Sky's joy. The presence of love so deep it had literally given him back his voice. Grant? Riley said softly. Yeah. What are you thinking about? Grant looked around their booth, their table, their sanctuary, their beginning. I'm thinking about how silence saved my life. How? If I'd never lost my voice, I never would have learned to listen. If I'd never learned to listen, I never would have heard Sky ask why I ate alone. If she'd never asked. Grant trailed off. If she'd never asked, Riley finished, we never would have found each other. Exactly. Sky looked up from her cranes. So being sad made you happy? Grant considered this seriously. Being sad made me ready for happiness. That's good, Sky said, satisfied. Because now we're all happy together. As they walked out of North and Pine that night, Grant carried a sleepy Sky in his arms while Riley held his hand. They were going home, really home, to their penthouse, their room for two, their life together. Grant Holloway had started this story as a mute billionaire dining alone. He was ending it as a husband and father surrounded by love. The silence that had nearly destroyed him had become the foundation for everything beautiful in his life. And in booth 7, where it all began, their cranes would keep multiplying, one for each week, each month, each year of happiness ahead. Some stories end with words. This one ended with love. And love, as it turned out, was the most powerful language of all. Thank you for joining Grant, Riley, and Sky on their journey from loneliness to love. Sometimes the most beautiful families are born not from blood, but from choice. And sometimes the greatest strength comes not from having a voice, but from knowing how to listen. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember that love always finds a way. Until our next story, keep believing in happy endings.